Nestled in a classic New England setting amid 200-year-old elm trees and charming colonial homes, stately sea captains' homes, and charming Cape Cod salt boxes, Shoreway Acres is a graceful blend of Cape Cod's past and present. Shoreway Acres, proud sponsor of Falmouth Community Television.
Welcome to Falmouth. If you're a visitor, this is where surf and sun meet for fun. If you're a resident, this is where you'll find the businesses and the resources necessary to fill all of your needs. If you're a business person, this can be your home. Join with other men and women who work together to make this a sustainable economy year-round. Welcome to Falmouth, Cape Cod.
Board of Selectmen's meeting tonight is Monday, March the 4th. If you all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all very much. First up this evening is discuss and vote the extension of the Falmouth Commodores Memorandum of Understanding per January 31st, 2013 correspondence. Heather is not here, but as the board knows, we have had a memorandum of understanding for the Falmouth Commodores in the use of the ball field behind Gus Candy Recreation Center. And I'd like to read into the record a potential motion that would once again solidify our memorandum with the Falmouth Commodores. Motion would read something to the effect of, I move the Board of Selectmen extend the 2011 Memorandum of Understanding by and between the Town of Falmouth and the Falmouth Baseball Club, otherwise known as the Falmouth Commodores, through September 30th, 2013, subject to the following. In addition to the mutual requirements of our Memorandum of Understanding, the Commodores are authorized to perform the following work further described in its January 30th, 2013 letter. Infield repair between second and third base in the shortstop area of the infield, repair and upgrade the Eric Palmer press box, regrade and repair old batting cage area, paint and repair the dugouts, as feasible, repair and replace fencing at Gov Fuller Field. Further, Falmouth Baseball Club shall meet with the staff team, including a representative of the town manager's office, the recreation department, the parks department, the school administration, and the athletic director prior to the commencement of the summer 2013 season to review the standards of practice and care and avoid scheduling conflicts for the 2013 season. Signs proposed for the Eric Palmer press box and proposed scoreboard shall be submitted to the Board of Selectmen for its approval accordingly with existing policy prior to the erection of any of those signs. So that would be the motion. If I could have a member of the board make that motion, and then we could open it up for discussion. Motion, and do I have a second? Motion and a second. Does anyone from the Commodores, would they like to speak on the memorandum and/or the motion? The idea, I know with this motion through September 30th, 2013, is to get us through this particular season. We once again, rather than do a year-to-year memorandum, MOU, would like to solidify and work together jointly to come up with a longer term, whether it be 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and as in a memorandum of understanding moving forward with the Falmouth Commodores in the town of Falmouth. So I'll give an opportunity for anyone from the Commodores to speak, or we'll just let the motion speak for itself. Yes.
Good evening. I'm Steve Costas. I'm the president of the Board of Directors of the Commodores. We believe that the motion does speak for itself, and certainly look forward to working together with the selectmen and the town to try to affect these improvements at Gov Fuller Field.
Okay. Does anyone else on the board have any comments in regard to the motion? I do want to make one comment. I know the Commodores have become a valuable part of this community. It provides enjoyment for many folks in this community. But we also have to remember that that field there is a field that is for our taxpayers as well as for the youth of our community. So when we struggle to find common ground for the use of that field, whether it be the high school, Babe Ruth, or things of that nature, we need to work together. Once the Commodore season starts, that doesn't make it a mutually exclusive field for the Commodores. This has to be a field that is utilized for the greater good of those folks in this community. That's why the memorandum stands as it is, to be able to provide you an opportunity to run a season, but also be able to provide an opportunity for the youth of the town of Falmouth to be able to play on what would be considered a big league field. And I know that's probably in both of our interests, because moving forward, we want future folks, youth of the Falmouth, to be able to someday participate in the Cape Cod League and maybe in professional baseball. Yes, Beth?
Well, I just want to comment as well that in the memorandum of agreement, it states very specifically the services and the improvements that the Commodores agree to make to the field as they use it. And these really constitute a gift to the town. So in a sense, it has been and can be further a mutually acceptable arrangement and a very positive arrangement.
Great. But yes, Doug?
I just wonder if we need to be consistent this is a consistent use of town property, and we have other policies about use of property and whether there are fees or things like that. Should we, in our memorandum of understanding, explain that we are not charging fees for the use of it? Instead, we're getting the maintenance of it by the Commodores.
I don't know, I'm going to defer to Heather Harper, but I would almost visualize that this is very similar to situations where we have some town buildings that we lease to community groups for $1 a year who provide in-kind services, meaning they improve those facilities, they maintain those facilities, old schools, fire stations, things of that nature. So I would think that's the same type of scenario. Is that true, Heather? Or?
There was a very rigorous process, including town council, that developed the MOU just 2 years ago. And it does contemplate that there is an exchange between the two parties that constitute a relationship. And so that, I think that's really already in there.
Great, okay. Thank you.
Okay, so without any further comment from the board, any public comment? I have a motion and a second on the table. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, you're all set,
Right.
Falmouth Commodores. Thank you. Have a good season. Hope you have a winning season. Okay. Next up is discuss and vote request for a waiver of the beach policy. Don Hoffer, this is a one-time waiver that Mr. Hoffer has brought to us.
Good evening, Don Hoffer, Beach Superintendent. I'm asking you to reconsider your vote in January, which wherein you indicated that Mr. Massey and his bride-to-be would have to hold their wedding at 4 p.m. in line with our beach policy. When I told Mr. Massey that that he could have his wedding at 3, I did not know when we would be opening the beaches, and as I stand here before you right now, I am not sure of when our beach opening day is. The wedding here is scheduled for the 23rd of June, which could be our beach opening day. But unfortunately, Mr. Massey went ahead. He's got his invitations all set for 4. I don't think that'll be an adverse impact on that beach. He's going to trolley everybody in, only 2 vehicles. Even 3 o'clock in the afternoon should be all right on that day. We won't know, based on our wages and salaries, we won't know whether we're going to open the beaches. We kind of, that's kind of a moving target at this time of the year. So that's why I went ahead with that, even though I'm well aware of the beach policy,
And it's just for the
which
board.
requires a 4 p.m.
But just for the board's information, the town manager's office has sensed this, and we're, Dawn had made a commitment to this particular wedding, not knowing exactly when the opening day would be. It was sent over to Dawn, the Board of Selectmen's beach policy, and rather than him send on an application that no any longer conflicts with our policy, he would review it based on the policy as we move forward, and I think this is really kind of one of those one-time exemptions, because we've already committed to that in some form or fashion.
I'm still concerned about the setup arrival time, it being at 9 a.m.
Yeah.
on Sunday, June 23rd.
We had talked to them about that, and I've told them he cannot tie up the beach that length of time. In fact, he's going to have to set up real fast. Yeah, that was an early ruling, and it's still a ruling that he cannot tie up the beach all day.
So maybe it would be fair to say his wedding's at 3, that we allow him set up at 2 o'clock,
That would give him ample time, even 2:30.
2:30? Okay. Does that sound good to the board?
I'm speaking, it's been a long time since I had to set up for a wedding, so maybe 2 o'clock would be
Yeah,
great.
2,
I think too.
well, I think,
Well, I don't think
If
they're
you're
bringing
willing to
it-
do that, that would be fantastic.
Right, Pat?
Well, there are 50 people he expects to be there, but, and they are setting up chairs, but he didn't say in the application how many chairs. But I would think an hour would probably be sufficient.
He knows that beach is small. There's
If
not
there
that
is a
much
beach
room.
there, depending on the tide.
I was just
You
gonna
never
say,
know.
I've also told him that.
did someone have a check on the tide?
Depending on the tide, you have more or less
Rocks.
room.
You have the beach wall.
Yeah,
Okay.
dicey.
So I'm looking for a motion
I'll move approval
to set up at 2.
to set up at 2 with the wedding at 3.
Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussions from the board? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Thank you, Don.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. We have, the next item up is a layout of but it is a public hearing, and it starts at 7:15. So I'll move to the approval of the minutes from February the 11th.
I move approval of the minutes from February 11th,
Yeah.
2013.
I'll second.
A motion on the minutes. Do I have a, and I have a second? Do I have any corrections, errors, omissions? Not hearing any, I'll call for the vote on the minutes of February the 11th. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There's one abstention, myself, I was not present. Okay.
I move approval and not to release the minutes of the executive session, February 11th, 2013.
Motion
And a second.
and
I'll
a second. Okay. Any further discussion? Motion is to approve and not release. All those in favor?
Aye.
And one abstention. So moved. Okay, next up would be a public hearing on the layout of the taking of Cash Trail and Castle Road in Sandcastle Drive. Mrs. Harper?
Sure, this is a step in the process towards the taking of these roads as public ways. All of these roads have submitted petitions dating back to 2009, I believe. These are all non-betterment roads, which means they currently meet the subdivision standards. The homeowners have worked with the town engineering department over the last year and a half to make some minor improvements so that the town can accept these roads. Further, they've agreed to take on all the cost of recording so that we can meet our commitment that town funds will not be used to take these roads. The next step following this public hearing, which is your opportunity to hear comment from the neighborhood, would be a vote to lay out by the Board of Selectmen, followed then by town meeting action, and then the order of taking is recorded at the Registry of Deeds. So this is sort of the midway point in the process, but tonight is a public hearing. The town engineer is currently at the Board of Health meeting, so if there are any engineering questions, we'll have to take those under advisement.
Pat?
Yeah. Is it the case that there are no road improvements that need to be made to
That's
these roads?
correct.
That they already meet the standards
Correct.
of the town? I looked at the documents in the clerk's office today, and that petition was generated in 2004. And their neighborhood is, well, I can't say it's new, but it's new enough that the roads do meet the standards and the roads are in good condition. So it doesn't require any funding on the part of the town to repair the roads.
I think this is a great way for us to add folks to our rank and file of roads that we're doing acceptances on, specifically ones that meet the standard of the town of Falmouth.
Peter's out there.
Peter, would you like to say anything? You're out there, we're talking about the layout of the roads? No. Okay,
If there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
okay, thank you. Anything else from the board in regard to that? Any other questions? So do I have a motion? Go ahead.
I want to make sure there's no public, it's a public hearing.
Okay, all right, I forgot about public comment. Does anyone have any public comment on these roads? Hearing none, I'll look for a vote to motion.
I move that we proceed with setting out the layout
Second.
on Cash's Trail, Castle Road, and Sandcastle Drive.
Okay,
Second.
motion, and we have a second. Any further discussion from the board? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. We'll go back to the summary of actions. the summary of actions. The next up is, well, we're going to read into the proclamation, into the summary of actions, so we'll just hold that individual one at first. Mrs. Flynn, yes?
Whereas Falmouth resident Sarah Sally Walker Smith was born on February 26, 1913, in Jacksonville, Georgia. Whereas Sally has a distinguished and active life, she completed her 11th and 12th grade education at Cochran Junior College, graduating at age 16. In 1938, she received her RN degree at Macon, Georgia, and moved to Staten Island to work in a marine hospital. In 1954, Sally returned to college and received her Bachelor of Nursing degree in 1957 at age 44. In 1958, she received her teaching degree. Sally spent the next 20 years teaching in New York City. In one class alone, she had 5 merit scholars. She retired from teaching in 1978 and at age 65 took a refresher course in nursing and worked at Beth Israel and Pace Institute in Manhattan. She formally retired from both teaching and nursing in 1999. Whereas Sally has been a resident of Falmouth since 2008 and is a member of the John Wesley United Methodist Church, Sally's daughter, Suzanne Smith Huguenin, is also a resident of Falmouth. Whereas Sally will celebrate her 100th birthday on Tuesday, February 26, 2013. Whereas members of the church wish to celebrate her birthday and commend the accomplishments of her life. Now therefore we, Kevin Murphy, Brent Putnam, Mary Pat Flynn, David Braga, and Doug Jones, selectmen of the town of Falmouth, by the authority vested in us, do hereby proclaim Tuesday, February 26, 2013 as Sarah Sally Walker Smith Day. A little late, but happy birthday.
Very true. So there's a motion
A second.
and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Very good. Happy birthday and congratulations. I wish you another 10 years. I don't know if we wish another 100 right away, but we'll go 10-year increments. How's that? We will stay on the summary of actions. If the board would like, I'll go right down the list and I'll call them if anyone would like to hold any. Number 2, approve request for special event Falmouth fireworks. I'd hold that one there. Approve request for events, PAL 5K Run fundraiser. Approve request for a special event, Art Market, Town Hall Square, Tuesdays, July and August. I'll hold that. Number 5, approve request for special event, 19th Falmouth Sprint Triathlon, Without Limits Production, Surf Drive Beach, 7/13/13.
Hold.
I'll hold on that. The next one is number 6, approve request for special events, Falmouth June Jog, East Falmouth PTO, 6/2/13. Approve request for special event, Run Jack Run, 1.1 miles, 7/4/13.
Could we hold that?
Hold that as well. Okay, number 8, approve request for wedding permit, Surf Drive Beach, on 5/18/13. Number 9, approve request for one-day liquor license, Masters Singers, 3/10/13. Number 10, approve payment of invoice for No Place for Hate donation account. Number 11, approve payment of invoice from the Commission on Disabilities donation account. Number 12, approve payment of invoice for the Recreation Department donation account. So we'd be looking to hold number 2, number 4, number 5, and number 7. So we'll be voting on number 3, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Oh, aye. Opposed? Ayes have it.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, sure.
Just in case there's anyone here from those organizations who just wanted to, sometimes they'd like to get a public announcement about that, just want to make sure that they don't miss out the opportunity.
Is there anyone in any of those groups that would like to speak?
Great.
Well, they may not show up till 8:50, and some of them have done that in the past.
Well,
We'll have to wait and see. We'll recognize them when they walk in.
Sure.
Thanks.
Okay, number 2 was approve request for special event, Falmouth Fireworks, Falmouth Heights Beach, The reason that I held that was only one reason. There was a request from the police department that the organizers of the fireworks take a look at the porta potty situation and work with the police department and the town manager's office to make sure they have ample porta potties in Falmouth Heights for the fireworks.
Well, I think it's fair to say that there were a lot of expressions of concern last time that they're just, from the police department, that there weren't enough porta potties, and they really suggested that they add to that number.
So, do we want to do a motion on this with the caveat that they work with the police department and the town manager's office to provide adequate porta potties for the Falmouth fireworks?
And also to reiterate the harbor master's, Greg Frazier's comment that they are not responsible for transporting anyone out to the barge for the purpose of the fireworks.
That's been spoiler language for the last couple of years after an incident that occurred several years ago.
I'll make the motion, Mr. Chairman.
So there's a motion
Second.
and a second. Any further discussion? Any public comment on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Next item we held was request for a special event. Art Market, Falmouth Town Hall Square, Tuesdays, July, in August 2013. Pat, you wanted to hold that as well?
Well, I wanted to hold it because it's a change of hours. In the past, the hours have been a set-up time at 1 o'clock, and then the market begins at 2, and it runs until sunset. And now they're requesting that a set-up time at 10, and the market running at 11. There was a time, I'm not sure how long ago, about a couple of years ago, when they started early, just happened to start early. I don't know if there's anybody here from the art market. I know that Marty Tullett couldn't be here tonight, but there was a lot of concern from the professional offices around Town Hall Square, particularly the dentists, that it was very difficult for them to actually work on patients in the morning because of the music and the crowds and the parking. Their patients couldn't find places to park, their staff couldn't park, and there were a lot of issues with the early time. And I would think that we might not want to do that, and maybe have more of a discussion with Marty and the art people. But a lot of complaints came in because of that early hour. It just caused a lot of congestion out here. So I would suggest that we approve a 1 p.m. setup with a 2 p.m. start time.
So you making that a motion?
I would make that a motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
And on the motion, I would tend to agree with you for more than one reason. Number one is there are some letters in the file from the professional officers. Keep in mind that those are private properties, that we're putting something right in front of their offices on a business day. We want to work together with them, but a band playing outside the door of someone getting a filling at the dentist office, it might not necessarily always be the appropriate type of scenario. Last year, they also, from what I understand, did do setups earlier in the morning, and there was quite a bit of controversy about that. So keep in mind that the parking is of the essence here in downtown, and folks still want to come to Town Hall to be able to do their business. We surely want them to pay their taxes so that we can provide all those services. So I think that's fair.
And I think, too, I mean, everyone, or not everyone, but downtown is very popular. And people obviously have offices here for various reasons, and a lot of restaurants and other businesses, and people want to come to town. But I think we have to work collaboratively and in partnership with people like the Arts Market. But we can't just let everybody have everything that works for them to have it work well for everyone else. So I think it's a compromise that is in everyone's best interest.
Okay, Doug?
I also want to reiterate that in their conditions, they talk about that vendors will park in the St. Barnabas parking lot. And I want to make sure that they're actually taking action to ensure that that does happen. I assume that they have permission from the church to use the parking lot, but that vendors cannot park, must be discouraged or disallowed by the organization from parking in the town hall parking lot or even on Main Street itself.
So do you want to amend the motion that would make some kind of suggestion that they get the vendors to move their vehicles after setup?
But that's they have that in the details of their permit.
Okay.
But I just want them to take action to really make sure that happens.
I just wanted to mention, I received an email over the weekend regarding this. The concern that people have is, and this is from an employee in the area, that whole Glenwood Place area, all by Falmouth Taxi, gets all jammed up, people parking on both sides of the road. I know it's part of the nature of it, but I just wanted to really, because if that road ever becomes, emergency apparatus could not get down Glenwood Place or something, it's very dangerous. And I just, maybe like Doug said, we have to make sure that they have somebody out there responsible, making sure where they can keep the traffic moving or something. Something should be done, though. I agree with Pat that the later setup time is best.
Okay, so getting back, the motion is
Yep.
to set up at 1, and the event hours are from 2 to 8 p.m.
Or 2 to sunset, whenever
Well,
that is.
right, sunset, it says, right, okay. Okay, so any further discussion, any public comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. We will go back to our regular agenda at this point. And next up is approved request for sign code variance from the Rotary Club, Falmouth Craft Fair. We have in the file a letter from the Design Review Committee dated February 13, 2013, December 13, 2013. DRC reviewed the request for 11 sandwich board signs to be placed around town the period of the fair between September 8th and September 15, as well as a notice of the fair of the Gus Candy Recreation Center. They're all considered off-premise signs and require the approval of the Board of Selectmen. They measure 2 by 3 and equal 6 square feet and will fit the sign code bylaw. As done on many of these previous fairs they have conducted, the club will obtain permission from the landowners for these signs. They will place not to be visibly hazardous to motorists. There's a larger banner to be used at the fair location in Marina Park on Scranton Avenue that measures 3 by 10 to equal 30 square feet and fits into our bylaw. It is considered on-premise and does not require selectmen's approval. So tonight we'll be looking for a motion for 11 sandwich board signs to be placed around town between September 8th and September 15th.
I'll make the motion, Mr. Chairman, to approve the 11 signs.
Motion?
Second.
Second? Any further discussion?
Is the fair actually at the rec center or at Marine Park?
It's at Marine Park. What happened was the Rotary Club are the ones that donated that sign, the sandwich board sign,
Okay,
at the rec department.
so they're using
we
that sign for that time.
Well, everyone gets to use it, but it was in lieu of us putting up banners in front of the rec center. They donated a sign that really is a sandwich board, that we could put some notice on that.
Excellent.
So motion and a second. All those in favor? Opposed? The ayes have it. Next up, at 7:30, is approve application for all alcoholic club license, Seacoast Shores Association, 7 Fairview Lane, East Falmouth, continued from February 11th, 2013. Bertha, just so you know, I've made a place for you up front here as well, so feel free if you'd like to be up there. Just before we get going with this, I did have an opportunity to review the minutes. I was not present at that hearing. Make a disclosure that I'm holding an all-alcoholic seasonal liquor license, and that I have reviewed the tape as well on regard to the past hearing. I'll open it up to the board for any discussion where we left it on the previous occasion.
I had a question for the applicant, just to confirm about
Do we
this.
have someone here that's going to represent the applicant?
Attorney Stephen McLaughlin for Seacoast Shores.
Go
I
ahead, Dave.
think as was recommended by members of the board that we go and check out the site before we voted on this. I did drive out there, and I'm concerned about the parking situation. I was concerned as to how you actually would get 34 cars there. And I was very concerned, if you had more than 34 cars, where would they park? Because it's a very, very narrow area, and I really want to make sure that we have a plan to make sure that if it's more than that, then they just can't get there.
There is a provisional parking plan that has been approved by the building department, and it's going to be built out as of October. That's the current plan. So the plan has been submitted, it's been approved, it's recognized that the parking is not complete because there's a swimming pool and tennis courts still going to be constructed. So in order to have construction vehicles able to get in and out to the areas where the construction will be, it hasn't been built out yet.
So what's the plan for parking for this summer?
Well, it's the same as it was for last summer. There's a lot of people that actually walk because of the residential neighborhood around it, and there has not been a parking problem yet, and it was quite busy. We even had functions. We had a function of 120 people, and parking wasn't an issue. As you may know, that there used to be a clubhouse at the same site, and that had a very small parking lot as well. Some of the parking that's been approved by the town is on Farview Lane. It goes along the grassy area there. So that is part of the parking area, although it wouldn't look like it on an initial viewing. It is part of the approved parking plan right now.
And you can actually get other cars through that lane?
Yes.
When they're parked in the grass?
Yes.
Pat, did you have-
Well, I had a couple of concerns too about the neighbors, particularly the homes that are right almost next door. But we've heard from them, and they are supportive to the license. And even though there is noise, they claim they are not bothered by it, and they would not be bothered by it with there to be a license in effect.
Yeah, Nasir Khan and Kay Khan, and John and Lee McLeod,
Right.
and let me see, Billy Main. They're all direct abutters across the street, literally next door, and they have all been very supportive. There have not been any problems at all in the operation during the past year, and I think that's something we should stress, is that we had several event liquor licenses throughout last summer. And so it gave us a very good, say, dry run of several weeks where we would work out problems, if any arose. And quite frankly, none arose. The parking was not an issue. Noise was not an issue. We had no neighbors complaining. The lights were shut off, I think, at 11 o'clock on a timer. So the association is very, very mindful that its clubhouse, its community center, is located in the very neighborhood that it serves. So we're the quintessential good neighbor. We're not going to be offending the very people who are the members and the participants in what the clubhouse and community center offers. So I think that's crucial for the board to understand.
Go ahead, Pat.
Could you tell us, what are the hours for the license? I couldn't find that.
The
Maybe it
hours,
was in the...
the hours that we had proposed were 11 to 1, although we were closing at 11 o'clock during the summer months. The issue of perhaps having it available to stay open later would be if there was a function going on and we didn't want to close it quite so early. But again, we're going to be mindful of what's happening in the neighborhood. We don't want to be creating noise. We don't want to be creating traffic. We don't want to be changing the nature and quality and character of that neighborhood. So that's something that we'd be listening to with the board as well.
Just a couple of notes. I had asked the town manager's office, the director of licensing, to pull a couple of tidbits of information for folks' information out there. This is a club license, so it would be subject to, in fact, the club license requirements. Would require the list of officers of the club each year. Only members and their guests will be served. Only members and their guests shall be served alcoholic beverages at this location. The hours of the operation, again, would be up until 1 a.m. That's a Board of Selectmen's policy, but also the State Alcoholic Beverage Control Commission's policy requires, and I'm going to give a little bit of information because there are folks that think that this is a bar or a restaurant that could be open to the public, and in fact, it cannot. If people can provide us information that in fact that is being done so, this license would be in violation.
Understood.
So I'm going to read into the record. Any club in any city or town wherein granted the license to sell alcoholic beverage or wine and malt beverage, as case may be, is authorized under this chapter, may be licensed by the local license authority, subject to the approval of the commission to sell such beverages to its members only, and also subject to regulations made by the local licensing authority to guests introduced by members and to no others. So I just want to reiterate, this is a club license. It is for members and their guests. We do this, we have these same club licenses in Falmouth at some of our fraternal organizations. AMVET's, Green Pond as well. So, you know, we don't go into an assumption of any license that we issue, this board issues, that folks are going to be in violation, because we hope that everyone's a good, upstanding citizen in this community. They play by the rules. So the rules are, in this situation, that a club license would only serve to those members and their guests. You have someone over your house, you want to bring them to a function there, that is a guest. And that's exactly how you know, the state ABC laws. I just wanted to make sure that.
One of the questions I had asked, if you recall, was were you going to be eventually advertising for public to be, and you said in the future. So, but what I did, go on your website, and these are the clubhouse provisions. And it says, as approved by the Board of Directors, the association clubhouse may be used by Falmouth residents for private, family/social functions. Advertising to the general public for a function is permitted only with the written permission of the operating committee. That's telling me that you're going to allow public, other than residents there, to use that to raise revenue. And in fact, as you read through all these letters, and here they are, and emails that I've received, and some of my board members have, and the ones in favor of this, it's like the underlying tone is, if we do not approve this, Seacoast is going to slide back into what it was in the 70s and 80s, and without this financial assistance of getting a liquor license. And I'm probably going to take a hit for what I'm about to say, but you know, so many times in society lately, we seem to have to rely on our vices in order to make enough money for things to happen, let it be liquor license, lottery, or whatever, and I understand, but if you haven't read all these letters, a lot of them are saying that unless we approve this, and I know what Seacoast was like in the 70s, that we're going to slide back into a very serious, crime-ridden neighborhood, and those aren't my words, they're in here. So, and I have concerns. We had concerns last time with the manager living in Minnesota, and I don't know if that's been rectified or, anyway, Mr. Chairman.
I just want to make a couple of points on that. Those current rules and regulations, if this board does not license this establishment, this board has no control over this establishment. They can do and rent to anyone they want. They can allow people to bring in coolers. They can bring in as much alcohol as they'd like, because they're just merely renting a facility then. This board has control when we issue a license. I stress to folks, because I'm in the liquor industry, and those of us who have been and made our livelihoods in this industry over a number of years realize the responsibility that is imposed upon us when we operate an establishment that has a liquor license. It's not only subject to this licensing board, but it is subject to the State Alcoholic Beverage Control Commission. When this board does not license an establishment, which is a possibility this evening, that does not prohibit this establishment from running functions. This does not prohibit this establishment from having weddings. As a matter of fact, what could happen is then that those functions would in fact be host bars with no control and no regulations. And I must add, this board would have no control over that, because there are no liquor license laws then that could be violated. It's important for folks to know that we hold our establishments accountable. And by doing so, we require them to be tips trained. We require their folks to be tips trained. It is in the public good to be able to do that. I honestly believe, David, that they would have to amend what they currently have in their website now if they were issued a club license, because they can no longer then just rent to somebody in the town of Falmouth. They would then have to go along with the club licensing policies by the Board of Selectmen, as well as the state ABC regulations. Without a license, I just want to make this quite clear to all the folks there, all bets are off. The only thing that this board can do then, and this, the Falmouth Police Department can do, is in fact enforce the noise violations in this community. If someone can rent, it'd be like having a private party in your own home. No one's allowed to go into that party and say who's here and who's consuming alcohol and how much you had. But when we have some control, when we, in fact, this board issues a license, we can demand control. If there's a violation of the license, we can shut the business down. We can restrict the business hours. We also have the ability to suspend the license. We have none of those abilities without a license. So folks have to be careful what you wish for. I just really want to reiterate this to everybody out there, because I honestly, being someone who's been involved in the liquor industry for over 35 years of my adult life, realize how important it is to be able to serve the public, but serve the public responsibly. But without a license, all bets are off. In fact, I would much prefer to make sure that we have the ability to regulate versus not have any regulations whatsoever. Merely what you would be paying is a hall rental or paying for a caterer if we don't issue a license, and then you could provide anything that you wanted there at that establishment.
If I may add, Mr. Murphy, not only does the board have the authority to regulate it, but each year it has to be renewed. And if troubles and problems arise during any period of time, we can be called back in. We would be called back in, I'm sure. And if problems persisted, our renewal would be at risk, or our times would be at risk, or further regulations could be imposed. I don't think that this board really has any real need to worry about that. In the past 10 years, Seacoast Shores Association has held over 90 major functions at our old building. We've had clam bakes, we've had 4th of July parties, we've had all kinds of things, and canine demonstrations. There's never been a problem. And that reputation will follow us into the coming years. The members of this association, 300 members of approximately 900 homes, have put up over $1 million to build this beautiful building that you've seen if you went by. We don't take that lightly. We understand the investment we all put in. We're not going to allow anyone to follow that up for us. And I can't stress that enough, that we are the association, we are the community. Last time we were here, Winnie Woods, who I see is here tonight, kind of looked back nostalgically on the way Seacoast Shores used to be in the 50s and the 60s. In the 60s, I was a kid growing up in Magansett, and I know what a small community can be like. We knew everybody. We knew absolutely everybody. And those days kind of disappeared in the 70s and 80s when we caught up in the rat race. Seacoast Shores, by virtue of the association that it has, and the connection that that association brings to everybody, through functions it does, through quarterly newsletters that go out to all members, page after page of news telling it what's happening in the community, what's happening in Seacoast Shores, events, etc. It is bringing together a community. The new building with its restaurant and liquor service, quite frankly, I met more people there last year than I had met in 5 or 6 years before that. Because when you go, you meet somebody or you see a friend who introduces you to another friend and introduces you to another friend, and the feeling and sense of community that that's fostering is really remarkable. I mean, we don't have it in most places. A lot of times you don't even know who your neighbors are. But here I know people 5, 6, 10 streets away that I never even knew a year ago. And that's something that we all cherish. I understand Ms. Wood's concerns that we're all racing into the future and we like to look back. And I think that this community center, because that's what this is, gives us that chance to step back, slow down, and relate and connect with people. And it's just crucial. Not only that, this association isn't about making money and a profit. It's a non-profit organization. We use the money we make, whether it's dues collection or any money that we have from the restaurant, to do things like maintain the beach that serves all residents of Seacoast Shores, not just the members, everybody. police details that we hire serves all the residents, not just the members. The beautification programs we do serves all the residents. The right-of-way maintenance that we do to the water serves all residents, not just the members. So this is an entity that serves a function that's greater than its membership. And I think that's something that's very important for everyone to understand. We give back to the community. We give back to the whole community, not just the members.
Brent.
Brent's next, okay.
Some comments and some questions. First of all, I think, I don't know if the board is aware, but I'm probably more intimately familiar with Seacoast Shores. I used to live there, and it was a wonderful neighborhood. In their days, I've told my wife I wish we still lived back there. It was a very intimate neighborhood, and we knew our neighbors better there, I think, than we have where we are now. I do have a question for you, Counselor, though. It's come to my attention that there are 2 levels of membership for your organization, that there are some members who did not buy into the club and therefore don't have access to it. Is that true?
There's 2 levels of membership. One is a recreation member, one is just a general member. Not everybody wants to be a recreation member, quite frankly. So there were people who basically ponied up the money to build the building, and we had to provide some kind of incentive that, well, if you do this, you get some added benefits. Everyone knew that, but that doesn't mean that you can't come there and participate. We had, I believe, several nights of just general membership access. I mean, it wasn't that.
2 nights a week.
Yeah.
Sir, you can't answer through that. If you'd like to go up and directly talk to him, that's fine, but we don't take comments through the audience.
So yes, there are 2 levels. You could have 2 levels of membership at a golf course. It's the same kind of concept. It's a matter of funding, who wants to participate at what level.
Yeah, understood. The members who didn't buy into the club, are they able to use the facilities the way a member who buys into the club are able to use the facilities? Would they be able to rent the hall and have a wedding function there?
I believe the answer to that's going to be yes, and it's also up in the air right now, I think, too, as to exactly how this is going to work out. Again, we've gone through a major change with the new building. It's something that people are interested in using, whereas the old one we called the bunker, cement block and linoleum floor.
Familiar with it, yeah.
Yeah. It just wasn't something that people were really interested in. But now with this, we're evolving into some changes of what people want to use it for and how they want to use it, and who wants to be involved and who doesn't want to be involved. So it's difficult to answer because we're still growing through that stage.
I would like to point out to the board that all the emails we received, where it wasn't clear in the emails, I reached out to those individuals, and every email that we received in favor of this were individuals who had bought into the club. We did receive some opposition, some individuals who called or emailed us, and one of the interesting things that I found is that there are some folks who are members of the association who did not buy into the club, who are opposed to the granting of this license. I just want to make sure the board understands that.
Mr. Putnam, if I can, there were people opposed to the building of the building.
Oh, I understand that. I understand. I guess one of the concerns that I have, you mentioned, Counselor, 90 functions over the past decade, never a problem. Understandable. But what we're talking about and what you mentioned the last time we were here is going from 30 one-day licenses to the potential of, and you folks even said it, the hope for 365 days a year. That's a tenfold increase in the potential number of events there. And it doesn't, I think, I have some serious concerns about the neighborhood itself. It is, as Mr. Jones mentioned, there doesn't seem like there's a lot of parking there. It's far down the peninsula. You're talking about a lot of traffic that would have to go back and forth there, and I'm concerned about truck traffic. Obviously, if there's catering for these events, alcohol has to be brought in from wholesalers. The trucks, there's going to be truck traffic down there that may not exist there now.
It would be minimal. There's not caterers coming in. I mean, we have the kitchen staff. We are bringing in, yet again, we had one last year, a chef and we had a manager.
How is the food delivered?
Oh, it's delivered in trucks, but as
Thank
far as those trucks, we have already spoken with them, and the scheduling of deliveries has already been done for last year. So that it wouldn't be done, for example, 6 o'clock in the morning or late at night or anything of that nature. They were trucks that would just come in, make a delivery, and leave. It's not the scale and type of volume that generates a lot of traffic. I know that's been a concern. Ms. Woods mentioned it before. It just doesn't generate that much. In a community of 900 homes, the number of cars coming in and out per day on car trips is by far the volume of the traffic. I mean, there would be less truck traffic going to this clubhouse than there would be rubbish trucks. I mean, the rubbish truck is in the neighborhood all day long. A truck delivering something there would be in and out down the main boulevard. I understand it's a concern. I don't think that it really creates a problem. It's minor.
I have one
Go ahead.
more question, if I may. The last time we were here, Mr. Jones raised the question about a seasonal liquor license.
Yes.
Would the association consider that?
The way that we have looked at this, and I have Dan Frawley who's here, he's done a lot of the financials, and I'd like to have him speak about that. But the business model that we have been looking at with the proposed manager that would be bringing in a professional manager is, in order to make this a viable entity, it really would need to be open on a longer basis. Because what would happen if we can't keep it open longer is every year you're struggling to find the professional people come in as chefs, people come in as staff, and so you know what it's like here in the summer, you just can't get people. And so in order to have continuity and a structure that can survive and maintain itself, that's why we believe that the year-long license is crucial. It's just, if it's summertime, it's not going to be able to keep on going.
I do have
Yep.
one final comment.
Sure. Not a problem.
Thank you for indulging me,
Not a
Mr. Chairman. I appreciate where you're coming from, but I do want to remind the board that it's not our responsibility to make sure that this is a viable operation. Our responsibility is to the community at large. So,
I understand that, and that's exactly where I'm trying to go with this. It's not up to this board to make us or break us, but as far as the community goes, we are giving back to the community. And so, in order for us to do that, we need to have a system that works. We're not asking you to fix it for us, but we're also asking to recognize that what we've done so far, the commitment we've made, and give us the opportunity to show you that we can do this, and we will do this. If this wasn't going to work, it's not going to be because we didn't try. And if we can't make it work with a seasonal license, then we can't make it work with a seasonal license. But the problem is, if you can't make it work with a full-time license, then we can't make it work. But to put the restriction of the seasonal, I think, puts us with one hand tied behind our back and our feet tied together. We can't get off to that start that we need to get.
Pat, you had
Well, I guess my other question is, how often do you expect that there will be food services provided along with the liquor over the course of the year? Just in the summertime, only on weekends, every day in the summer for 3 months? What is your plan?
Last summer was, again, the starting summer. It was the dry run, just getting up and going. And we were running Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. That's all we could do. In the summer, we would expect to be going full-time every day, and there'll be a drop-off with Labor Day. We'd expect to be staying busy through the fall, on weekends, slowing down the winter, obviously, and then picking up again in the spring.
But you were restricted Thursday through Sunday by liquor.
Correct.
You could have served food Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Theoretically, yes, but it would have been a loser. There was no interest in it. That's what the problem was. Yeah, we could have, but there wouldn't have been anyone there.
I just a couple of points, and you made some good points, Brent. But to the best of my knowledge, there is no seasonal club license. There is a seasonal license. Club licenses are a different category. Now, I could be wrong, but on best of my knowledge, There is no seasonal club license. I will say to the board that there's going to be seasonality here, whether they want to believe it or not. The Falmouth Yacht Club has a very vibrant membership, and they have a license, and they just can't keep it together in the wintertime because there's not enough business to go around. So I don't know whether you want that or not, but, you know, the market will dictate. Again, I'm going to come back and say that they're going to serve food here Thursdays through Sundays. I would much prefer to have control over that liquor that goes out, rather than have someone walk down the road with a handle, a half-gallon of vodka in their hands, and walk in the club and put it on the table, because there is nothing that anybody can do or say about that. So, I mean, they can continue to operate the food service without the liquor license.
Just to clarify, it was Thursday through Sunday last year. If we had the full license, we could be open every day of the week. There is going to be a pool there, there is going to be tennis courts there, and to be able to have the service during the day for food, hamburgers, hot dogs, whatever, I mean, the pool's going to be busy. We know that. That's important as well.
Well, the other comment I wanted to make was that if there isn't a license, like you say, you can operate it however you choose. People can rent it. They can hire a caterer. Caterers now get their own licenses, liquor licenses through the state. Nobody at the club has to get it for them. They can get their own licenses. That happens at Highfield. When there are events there, the caterers get their own license because Highfield doesn't have a license. So that could be a detriment in a sense, because there's no control over that, over the people who come, over the amount of liquor that's served. Obviously, I don't know what rules and regulations apply to the caterers, but I would think that they would want to have some control over that and hire bartenders that are obviously tips trained and trained to know when people had enough. The other part that concerned me was going for this license now, when the parking lot isn't complete, the pool isn't in, the tennis courts aren't there. It's almost like the only reason for going there is to eat and drink. Whereas before, people might go to swim or to play tennis and then come in and have a drink. That's the other thing. But on the other hand, on the positive side, the chairman is absolutely correct. Without a license like a club, and it is very much restricted to members, because we have a number of them here in town, club licenses, and only members can come in. Like PAL has a club license, and only a member of PAL or a guest can come in. So it's very restrictive. That's very good in one sense, because there is more control over the license. But the other thing that concerned me was that there are 900 homes in Seacrest, so there are 900 families that live there, and only 300 are members. So there's not a lot of people who live there are going to be part of this. And, all right, you want to answer that?
I do.
Okay.
That's why the clubhouse was built. The clubhouse was built because the whole association had been supported by a few people. It was almost the 80-20 rule. 20% of the people do 80% of the work. And what we were trying to do is give an incentive, a reason to join, because people didn't see the value, quite frankly. And again, Dan Frawley could talk to this because he was crucial. He was the lead guy in the development committee. What we saw was that over the years, Seacoast Shores was dwindling in its membership because it didn't have anything to offer. It had a bunker of a cement cinder block building. Down the end, it was a dump. And so you could rent it. Wow, big whoop. I mean, no one wanted to be in the place. And so we looked at it and we said, we have to change our vision, because if we can't offer something, if there's not a bigger value, no one's going to want to join. And so when we proposed the building, I think there was another 30 members who joined like that. And so this building is truly a community center designed, intended to bring the community together. It's going to take a while. It's not going to happen this year, but in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, that community is going to continue to gel, coalesce, come together as people get to know each other better. And that's what's going to help the membership continue. It's going to help keep the prices low. It's going to allow people to participate. But in order to get it started, somebody has to prime the pump. And so we've had 300 members dip into their pockets to some serious cash, I'm one of them, and pony up and get it done. And it's working. It's going to take a while. It's not going to happen overnight. But it is going to be one of the communities that Cape Cod will look at and say, boy, they did it right. Cape Cod Life has already recognized that. They had an article last year that said Seacoast Shores is one of those hidden gems. It's one of the best values on the Cape. And what did they point to? The commitment of the residents putting up a clubhouse. And so what we're asking here is, please recognize what we're doing, the intent of what we're doing it for. We don't want to put on huge functions. That's not what we're about. What we want to do is bring the community together. We want to do it in the right way, in a way that benefits everybody, member or not, and gives the community an opportunity to come together, coalesce, and grow as a community. I understand questions and concerns about the parking right now. They're legitimate concerns. I'm not going to dispute that at all. The parking lot has to be built out. The swimming pool's going in this year. But those, I hope, the board will see as minor temporary things that you would want to see progress. The building department wants to see it progress. The zoning board wants to see it progress. Everybody wants to see that parking lot done. It's October 31st is the deadline. It's been extended once, and it's not going to be extended again. But what we're really trying to do here is make a community. This is a part of it. We believe it's an essential part of it. It's the thing that puts all the pieces together for us.
Just one more question. What part of the premises would you want licensed, other than the inside and a deck?
I believe it's just the inside of the deck.
Is that it?
It's on the described license
is.
in the plan,
Okay.
what they have licensed. It's not outside
not-
of the pool and
No, it's not.
things of that. It's only that area,
Okay.
which is this isn't an innkeeper's license. Innkeeper's license allows for alcohol anywhere on the premises. This license is for the described serving area.
It's a control issue.
Right. Okay, any other questions from the board before I turn to the public comment? Anyone want to say anything in the public? I know that some people have spoken in the past. Wonderful. You have to come to the... We're not making any decisions yet. We're asking for some public input here.
For and against.
For and against. All right. Well, doesn't really matter. We'll take those for or against. I'm not the type that allows, okay, let's one, you're more than happy to speak.
Okay. I am more than happy to speak.
Okay, that's great.
Thank you. I made extensive comments last time, and I know that you did review the tape, as you said. So I'm going to try not to repeat myself and waste your time. I just would like to comment that, again, the 300 members include general members who are not recreational members. The recreational members are far fewer than 300. I know an awful lot of people who simply cannot afford the price tag for this clubhouse and the membership that actually benefits the so-called community. It's a minority of the community. When I hear the hours from 11 to 1, I just cringe, because as I said last time, it's becoming almost impossible to sleep in warm weather when the windows have to be open. You have to have air conditioning if you live on the boulevard now. And I see this facility becoming more commercialized, more public-oriented. I know you say you have more control if a license is issued, but I question that. I've spent a lot of time on committees in this town, and I see an awful lot of breaking of the rules and regulations on a regular basis. And when money's involved, there's only too many people that like to fudge. And I don't know how you enforce members only and members and guests only. I mean, do you have 2 members and 30 guests from off the street with all those cars going up and down? And I mean, when I hear the possibility of 365 days, if this is a community center, why are we talking about the need to serve alcohol? I realize that they've used 30-day per year one-day liquor licenses in the past, but that's been increasing over time. When I was a little girl, I doubt that they used more than 5 or 6 at most. And I am nostalgic for that. I think that there was a lot more consideration for one's neighbors. There were a lot fewer people, a lot fewer car accidents because we had a lot, less traffic. Again, I want to point out this is outside the core area. This is hard for the police to protect. And I think that unless the board wants to fund another police position, and I think that you're going to have an increase in accidents that are going to require an awful lot of emergency service time on Seacoast. I'm seeing it already. If you want to help us, put a stop sign at each and every one of those intersections, as I spoke to last time. I would say that the club membership, the board of directors did not do its homework if they say they need this liquor license and they need to serve alcohol in a residential area, in my opinion, they did not do their due diligence to find out if the residents actually could support the kind of use that they are proposing now. Certainly, there was some opposition to the building of the clubhouse because a lot of the old long-term members could see they weren't going to be able to sustain their membership. I'd like to point out that the parking lot in that strip will require that strip to be denuded of all vegetation, or just about all vegetation. That grassy strip does have trees in it. Yes, they're old, Cape Cod scrub pine, but still, it's vegetation that I value. Okay, one question. The chair indicated that the board could suspend the license if there were violations. My comment is, if they can do anything without the license, why would they really care if you suspend their license? They can do anything they want. Anyway, thank you for your
Just for your
attention.
information, once they have a license, if we suspend it, they can no longer operate or have alcohol in that building. Once there's a pending license, I'll explain to you, first of all, they cannot, at this point in time, apply for a one-day license because they have a pending license. If we deny the license, they can start applying for one-day licenses. They have a pending license, you can't apply for a one-day license. If they have a license, we suspend the license, no alcohol activity can take place in that building. We have control. If they do not have a license, we have no control. We can shut the building down, we can shut the business down, we can shut the alcohol service down, but only if they're licensed. If they have no license, we cannot do any of those things. That's just an answer to your question.
All right, again, how do you enforce it? I really believe there's
We have
going
a
to be a
police
problem.
department. We would hope that the police department does a great job, and I think they have over the years.
They do a good job, but as I say, this is way out there and it's really tough. This is not on the way where they can, drive by. They have to make a special trip with a lot of time involved to know what's going on down there. And quite frankly, I live over a mile away, well, approximately a mile away. How do I say, there's 40 million cars going by here at 55 miles an hour. When I call, they say, we'll send a cruiser. And how many times do you read in the police reports that there's a problem, a disturbance? By the time the police get there, they're gone. I am nostalgic for the 70s and 80s. As crime-ridden as it was a lot more pleasant to live down there than it is now.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Please identify yourself. Thank
Yeah,
you.
my name is Bob Donahue. I live at 405 Seacoast. So I live from here to just outside the front door from the clubhouse. And as much as I appreciate everybody's opinion, I had the air conditioning on 0 last summer. The windows open, I'm up high, and it was a great place to be. We had no problems. The lights go out, the sound it's negligible, you don't hear it. So no issues at all, and I lived there. And I remember, and I'm new there, so 2 years in. And I remember sitting on my front porch, and my wife and I were watching the police cruisers on the 4th of July weekend go up and down the street. And then we were informed by Bob Barker that that's police cruisers that are hired by Seacoast Shores. And I was there for 2 summers. I haven't seen a single thing. I haven't heard a single thing. And, if the issue is drinking, I think people really want to be in their backyard with a big party if that's what they want. That's not what you go there for. You go there to see your neighbors, maybe have a drink, have a hamburger, and then you're out of there. So I'm 100% in favor of it. I think it's been a great addition. And as the attorney has spoken, I think it's just the beginning to grow that into something special down the road. So thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comments? Yes, sir. Come right up, identify yourself, please.
Hi, my name's Dan Frawley. I'm a Seacoast Shores resident. I wrote a letter, and thank you, Brent, for responding. I know you guys read that. I can probably be accused of being at the epicenter of this because I was on the original committee 10 years ago. Actually, at 11 years ago, I was complaining about all the problems in Seacoast and some of the things you're talking about. And somebody from the board convinced me to stop kibitzing from the stands to get into the game, which I did. And I got into the game. I've been on Seacoast since I was 7 years old. I don't live there currently. I'm trying to get there full time, but we're getting there little by little. But I was struck by, I think I presented 90 times to the memberships over a 6-year period. That was a result of developing with this committee a new vision for Seacoast Shores. And the new vision for Seacoast Shores was necessary for one reason: that Seacoast Shores was financially broken. The association was. We had a problem where there was a fully depreciated set of assets. There were no funds to replace those assets, and there was not enough money to fund the replacement of those assets. That was the simple facts. So we're left with, and the reason for that was simple. We had 900 people with the expectation to use assets for lots of legacy reasons 50 years ago in documents and deeds that believe they had the right to use the beach, the right to use the right-of-ways, the right to use all those things. Yet, only 300 people, my dad being one of them, took it upon themselves to pay their dues every year, which was clearly communicated in the original documents. So you evolve that 50 years forward, and you have 900 people using what 300 people were paying for. Okay? That was the fundamental fiscal problem. Seacoast Shores, as a result, was down the tubes. You didn't have to go to Harvard Business School to know that. Okay? I happen to go there. And the fact of the matter is, when we got involved in this, I thought that we have two choices. This is the strategy. Our vision was, we believe Seacoast Shores can be the best community in Cape Cod. We believe that. My wife and I can live anywhere in Cape Cod. We live in Seacoast Shores. And the reason we did that was because we love the diversity of Seacoast Shores. We love the fact that there's $100,000 homes. On the other end, there's $4 million homes. Nowhere else in Falmouth it's difficult to find that. Living in a homogeneous part of Minnesota, we really love that and appreciate that. The strategy was to fix that financial problem. We had two choices. We either create a stick approach, which some communities had used, where we could have got on the legal team, and we could have sat there at the beach, we could have sat there at those right-of-ways and demanded that people that use them pay their dues. That would have created a lot of problems. If you know Seacoast Shores, which you do, Brent, that wouldn't have been a neighborly thing to do. We have a lot of independent Yankees up here in New England, and I know that. They would not have liked that. They would have argued it and believed it. That was the stick approach. We did not take that. That left us with one choice. I believed, and I advocated for this choice, I believe that we had tremendous natural assets. Our forefathers and the management before us, the management of the association was well-intentioned but poorly managed. But one thing they did really well, they left us some tremendously beautiful assets in the Falmouth. We had 3 acres facing west, those 31 right-of-ways that we maintained, many that we own, some that we just maintain. And we did that. And so we said, why not attract? Let's make something so valuable that everybody will be a part of it. And our goal, we will not rest until everybody is a part of it, even the people that can't afford to be part of it. Because what hasn't been mentioned today, the programs we're going to talk about in the spring, myself and other people in this room, they'll donate money. The haves, as I said in many of our meetings, the haves will actually help and donate, and so the have-nots can be part of it, right? Our goal is not to exclude anybody. That's never been our goal, right? So we embarked in this program, and it took 90 presentations. I sometimes flew back to Minnesota, and it wasn't just me. There were many other people involved in this, right? To every single member, I made myself available with the other 10 people, and many of them in this room, every single meeting. I'd go anywhere, go anytime. I went to people's homes. Anytime they wanted to talk about it, I was happy to talk about it. I heard all the issues, all the complaints, all the problems, and we structured a program to do that. And the net result of that was we completed the necessary funding requirements. We have no debt on that building, Zero. That was one of our core principles. We would not go into debt. We did not close that campaign for 5 or 6 years during one of the worst economies in the last 30 years. Here we are raising money on Seacoast Shores. We got $1.2 million to do it. We closed it, and we closed that marketing period. Meant you could continue to be a member, but the price would start to go up. That was good information we got from Great Harbors Yacht Club. So if there's one thing I would say during this whole process is the amount of expertise around this problem is incredible as a community. Legal, contracting, I mean, every single discipline we had people on this management team. The net result of it was to create a carrot approach, to turn around and take a financially fully depreciated community that was out of funds, an association was frankly ready for dissolution, was to rejuvenate it by using a carrot approach and taking its natural assets without asking for help anybody outside the peninsula, but just our own residents. And we did that. We raised the $1.2 million. We created something really valuable, and the greatest comment from when we opened it last year for us in here was to hear people come and go, son of a gun, I just thought it was another effort at Seacoast Shore that failed. We actually frickin' did it. And I'm going to figure out how to get money and get involved in this. And to see people like Steve McLaughlin up here donate his time, and so many people in here have donated time to do this, basically because we know that the vision and the mission that we have at Seacoast Shores is being achieved. And there's a lot of passion around that. You can hear that in my voice. And it has nothing to do with finances. I didn't come here from Minnesota, my wife, for a liquor license. I came here because of the community. I guarantee you, nobody would fly from Minnesota to Cape Cod about a liquor license. But I would come here, as everybody in this room would come here, to continue towards this tremendous vision that we have at Seacoast Shores, which is being achieved, and that's why people are here. It's being achieved. And that's a pretty cool thing. Now, relative to the finances, like it or leave it, or the reality of it, relative to the assets that we had, we built the business model, and I'm intrinsically familiar with every single detail and every single number on the P&Ls, the cap table. We built the most overly sophisticated little association, in which, by the way, to be specific, one of the things that frustrated me in the 90 or so presentations or 60 presentations that we gave was the absolute reluctance of people to use any facts in the conversation. Okay? One of the facts is the Seacoast Shores police budget, which was underfunded like everything else prior to the start of this vision, was $2,000 a year. The Seacoast Shores budget now for police detail, if anybody's going to catch anybody screwing around or somebody drunk driving, it's going to be our own police detail, because our police detail, funded by our own members now, is $10,000. That's a direct result of this, the dues and the financial strategy we've implemented to build this association and put it back on track. That's our own police detail, $10,000. So we're spending 5 times more than when I used to hop out of my father's bedroom of my parents' house on 35 Woodside Drive and go piss off all the dogs when I was 15 and 16 years old with my brother back in the 60s and 70s and 80s. I wouldn't make it 2 streets now, because the police are all over Seacoast Shores, and the kids know it, and the thieves know it. And don't take this the wrong way, but some of our best friends over on Green Pond said they have a crime problem now. Great Harbors, they said, well, I guess we're exporting our crime problem. I'm sorry, I don't really feel too bad, but they know that they can't pull it off in Seacoast Shores anymore. So to bring this to a close, we are on our path to financial health. We built the model around a restaurant, pool, tennis court. The number one thing that was required that our members asked for, and we surveyed them, I'm the CEO of a market research company. We surveyed them, was they wanted a dock. And we can't have a dock in Seacoast Shores because the water's not deep enough. And we are trying, and we will buy a house, we will figure a way to build docks someday for people that can't. I can assure you we'll do that. There's lots of natural assets there. The next things they wanted, we built. They wanted a clubhouse, restaurant, bar, tennis court, and a pool and tennis court. We're building those. That's phase 1. This is not the end of it. This is just the beginning of it. Just make that really clear. And like it or leave it or love it or not, David, the fact of the matter is, wine is only as bad as you make it, right? Jesus himself talked a lot about wine. It's only when it influences your heart and your head and your driving, that's when it's a problem, to the point where you're making bad decisions for yourself. And as a community, we're very committed for that not to happen. Right?
Okay. Any other public comments? Yes, ma'am. Come right up. No, the woman in the back. Did you want to speak as well, ma'am? You can't speak from there. If you do, I'll get you up on the microphone next. Okay. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Introduce yourself, please.
Ellen Hanley. I don't live on Seacoast Shores. I live in Falmouth Heights. My husband and I have lived in Falmouth Heights for 15 years, and we want to sell our big house, which the sale is pending, and we want to move to Seacoast Shores because our daughter and her family live over there, and we've been over there to a lot of different functions that they've had in the old clubhouse, and then last year with the new clubhouse. And we're so impressed with the people who live over there that we want that to be our retirement home. And so we've bought a small house, and we're moving there. And we're just so excited.
Okay, thank you.
We're in favor.
My name's Elizabeth Gary, and I've lived on Seacoast for 30 years. And the reason that I want to speak is because this clubhouse will enable me to be a neighbor. I think it's so important for Falmouth to have good neighborhoods, and that's the real key for this clubhouse to exist. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, sir. Take your time.
Good evening. My name is Frank Gorgoni. I live at 28 Edgewater Drive East. Since 1973, my wife and I have owned properties, a house. In fact, we were neighbors of Winnie for quite a few years on Sachem Drive. In fact, my daughter, one of our daughters, bought the house and is living now next to Winnie, and we moved to Edgewater Drive. But anyway, I just want to say that since 2003, when we both retired in 2001, 2003, I been a resident, year-round resident. I also am involved in the association, the board of directors. My position is the chairman of the Neighborhood Watch program. Now, I kind of got recruited because of my other life. I spent 35 years as a police officer in the city of Newton, with the last 10 being a police chief. And I guess it evolved into, my wife said I had to get out and start using my brain a little bit again. So anyway, that's the reason why I'm involved. And it's really been a treat to see the association evolve from when I was there and when we bought the house. And I got to agree with Mr. Braga that we used to hear sirens going up and down the street the whole weekends and vacations. And probably shame on me for not doing a little more research into it as a police officer. I probably would have looked somewhere else. But that's the point, is that we stayed, we love it there. We have seen the association evolve and the people there. We have police details, which I'm responsible to hire. We have a very good rapport with the police and their neighborhood watch representatives over the years, and including the last 10 years that I've been involved. We do hire the police details, and like it was mentioned, we've gone to where we have a budget of $10,000. I haven't had quite a bit of experience dealing with budgets over the years. I have to spread them out, obviously. Police details, we usually do 4, 6, or 8-hour details, and it's usually on the weekends. And during that time is when there's probably a little more crowded on Seacoast Shores on the weekends than it is on a Tuesday night. So as a result, I kind of keep the details for the weekends. They've been great. They have one of the things that they are told to do, that I have requested for them to do, is to watch for the speeding on Seacoast Boulevard. And I think they've responded great. Now, I just want to say that I think the association and the direction we're going in is the right thing, not only for the Seacoast Shores, but also for the town of Falmouth. I heard somebody say about being one of the communities on the Cape that people are recommending to live in, and I'm just grateful that I lasted out the first few years, because now I wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, I'm Lee McLeod, and my family and I live at 13 Farview Lane. So we are directly next door to the clubhouse. And I have 2 young children, and if anyone should have had concerns about the noise and the traffic and that type of thing, it would have been me, because my kids like to ride their bikes and play outside and whatnot. And I'll tell you, it's been a completely positive experience. I've had no complaints whatsoever. My family and I have enjoyed being at the clubhouse and participating in the activities there. And that's one of the reasons we bought the house where we did, because of the association and what it's bringing to the community. So we strongly support the changes that are being made.
Great. Okay, any last comments? Yes, sir.
My name's George Collins. I live at 52 Atwater Drive. It's the 6th street down. I'm also a registered professional engineer. I've been involved with traffic analysis, traffic studies, that type of thing. And based off of my firsthand experience seeing how everything operates, it's actually pretty amazing when we do have events or whatever. People kind of come out of the woodworking on foot, and people walk to the clubhouse. In fact, we live over a mile away, so we quite often will ride our bikes down and have dinner like we did last year. So I just think the biggest traffic issue, I believe, is right at the intersection of Route 28. And rather than having 20, 30 families getting in their car, driving wherever in Falmouth and entering that intersection, they're either, half of them are probably walking or riding their bikes to the clubhouse, and the other half are driving to the clubhouse, not off the peninsula. And so I think just from a general traffic impact, and even from a carbon footprint perspective, I think it's actually a good thing, lower the carbon footprint. And and I'm respectfully requesting that you help us achieve our dream at Seacoast Shores. And not that the liquor license is the all that end all, but I think it would help facilitate the process and the dream. And the cost benefit is absolutely there. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any last comments? Yes, sir. I'll get him and then you. Thank you.
How you doing? My name's Peter Langen. I bought in Seacoast in 2001. And I just want to say, from a family perspective, when I first bought there, honestly, about 6 months later, I thought I made a mistake because of the bad rap that I heard about Seacoast. Couldn't have been any more wrong. It has been the greatest place to have my kids. I have 3 young kids. 2 of them were born down there. It's been a fantastic community. The thing that drew me to it is the people, the neighborhood, everybody coming together. And at that time, the association wasn't as strong as it was. I have to say now I've been on the board of directors now for 2 years. I am also now, I was on the building committee, so I was involved with getting the building going, and that leads me into, I can update on the parking. Basically, we will be doing the pool this year, and the tennis court will not be completed this year. What we have done on our special permit that we got the extension for, we've allotted in the tennis area for parking to take place in that area until the parking is finished completely. So we do have the ability to keep all the vehicles on site. We are working with zoning as far as our alternative, and the alternative strictly, we have a full permit in place for all the parking required, but we have some concerns from the neighbors, and they don't want us to clear cut the center island. So basically, we're just working for an alternative to try to keep some more vegetation there. And again, this is what the association is doing. We're working to keep the community happy and keep the neighbors happy. So that's the reason for the extension. We have not had any complaints about the parking. Again, the association has gone out of its way, and that's what drew me to become part of it. Again, I mean, we've got thousands of hours. I can't tell you what people have put into this project, all free. I know I could have made $1 million if I had billed my hours out, but we got the job done. And again, it's just all about community. I mean, you've heard people say how it's really brought people together, and it is absolutely true. So, I mean, our goal is to 5 years, 10 years down the road, would love to see every 900 homes to be part of this, one way or another. And we've put out numerous ideas, and we're coming up with more. So, again, this isn't to drive anybody apart, it's to bring everybody together.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, my name is Joe Bornstein, 226 Edgewater Drive West. I am a member of the club. I've enjoyed myself going to the club in the evening, having a meal, get home on a Friday night, don't feel like cooking, go to the club, have a meal, have a drink with it, go home. Again, I'm not driving down Main Street. I've got a place to go that's nice, it's quiet, it's nice people, and it's, like I said, it's just a place to go for the people that live in the neighborhood.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Did you want to say something?
I would. Actually, my name is Arlene Schubert, and I'm the one that is listed as a manager. I am on the board. We are actively looking right now, and we think we've come very close to a full-time manager of a local person that would live here year-round. So I just want to say that. But I do also want to say there might even be like a third level of being part of the association, and that is paying your yearly dues. And that's why we want everyone to know that when you pay your yearly dues, which is on the average is about $300 a year now, that takes care of your front entrance, your access to your beach, your access to your right-of-ways, the insurance and taxes that goes on there. So that's a very reasonable price to pay. And then when you're a general member, you are invited 3 to 4 times a year to come in and join in the activities that have always been present there. And then our goal is to invite people in that are general members to come in and use the facility, whether it be, last year it was once or twice a week they could come in and just see it, but we wanted them, to still come in, and whether it be the 3 or 4 times a year that they're invited with the big events that we have, or they are able to come in, whether it be once a month, whether it be like a Friday night, and come in and do a pizza night. So I just want to let you know that I and my husband, we've been married 23 years and have had our property there for 23 years, and he's been there much longer. But I thank you for your time.
Any last comments? Okay, I'm going to close the public Yes, sir. Okay.
Thank you. My wife reminded me of a very important point, which I was delinquent on, which is the strategy of the carrot approach to create something valuable to bring people in. They make the investment, and then they have the option to become a rec member or not every year, but they are invested in the clubhouse. Key point, and I missed it, and thank you for reminding me of that. When they commit to become an investment member, they establish a new covenant. They make a commitment upon that investment that they are now lifelong dues-paying members of the association. Okay? So that makes, that stays with the house, so that eventually all 900 homes, as they come in and they move, will all be committed to the association. That's important.
Thank you. I'm going to close the public comment at this point, and open it up to the board's discussion. Frame this a little bit for the board. You can either approve, deny, or you can restrict the current license. In other words, hours of operation or something of that nature. So we can have a little board discussion. We did have some discussion originally here. I'll open it up to the board and hear what you folks have to say.
Well, I'm going to say I've really thought a lot about this, and at the first hearing, I was really concerned that we didn't have enough information, which is why I suggested that we continue the hearing. And I think one thing about a liquor license is, and I think the attorney here and residents spoke to it, is that it's only good for a year. I mean, in the sense that it's an annual license. And I don't know, and I certainly appreciate all the concerns that were raised by Winnie Woods and others. But I also hear from a lot of people who are fairly new to the area and some who are not, who really want to make Seacoast Shores a better community. And I think that for all of us who live here, we always want our neighborhoods to become better communities. Does a liquor license make a community better? Well, that's debatable. But I still feel very strongly about what the chairman said, because I believe it as well, that you have to have control over it. And if you don't have control over it, then you could end up with more problems. And I know there's been a lot of positive comment that we have heard tonight. And I, for one, would be willing to see how a license worked over the course of a year. If you can maintain a club license, you can maintain it satisfactorily, that it doesn't create problems. It's certainly more restrictive than just a regular liquor license. So I'm persuaded to consider the license for at least the course of this year, and have them come back at the end of the year and let us know if we haven't had complaints in the interim, how things went, what happened, what was positive, what the negatives were, and maybe in some way, I think the town ought to be supporting Seacoast Shores as well. I mean, it's been a long-established community for many, many years. We've all been down there. Brent lived there. I've been down there many times. And if this can help the board and the community get to a new level, then maybe we ought to see how it goes.
Okay. I'll make a couple of comments. And Brent, you brought up a good point, is that, you used to live in Seacoast Shores, and I think that each and every one of us has seen the little villages, and not even the 9 villages we have in this town, but the segments of those villages. The attorney mentioned Megansett. In North Falmouth, there's Megansett, there's New Silver Beach, there's Wild Harbor. And each and every one of these little communities has a sub-community. I know that the little community I grew up in, I say to my wife, I want to go back home someday. I live by Old Silver Beach, but I really would like to go back home someday. And it's only 2 miles from where I live. But we all remember where we grew up. There's a little bit of that nostalgia, but you know what? We become all part of the family. And in these little villages, we have yacht clubs, we have clubhouses, we have associations. And the beauty of America is you get the opportunity to either join those associations, join those clubs, or not. But what those groups do is they provide a benefit for everybody, because they help provide a community center. They help provide and bring each and every one of us together. Sometimes I get a little bit of a goosebumps, and pardon me for that, because that's part of what makes Falmouth great. If everyone in Falmouth had to, every Friday and Saturday night, get in their cars and go to the restaurants on Main Street, or I'd love you to come to the restaurants in Woods Hole. I mean, quite candidly, this is arguing against the restaurant business. But that's what makes us a community. We'd bring all 100,000 people in this community together on Main Street in Woods Hole. And we just would not have the capacity. What is great is that you provide a place and meeting places within your little sub-communities that you all can interact. And you have the option to do so or not to do so. Let's face it, it's not part of government. Some people have to pay for that. We all have to pay if we're coming to my restaurant. You have to pay if you're going to join a yacht club or a clubhouse or something of that nature. But it does provide a community, and it does provide a little altruism within those communities, meaning that those folks really want to protect their community because they want to keep it special. So I believe that its options are a choice, and having been, again, involved in the liquor industry, whether and had been working for Anheuser-Busch, owning restaurants in my career, all of my adult life. I know that when you have control, you're in a much better situation. We're not here talking about the permitting of this facility. It's there, it's built. Whether they do the tennis courts or the pool is something else subject. What we're talking about this evening is the liquor license. And if we issue a liquor license, I'm going to say to this board that we have some control and we can monitor that liquor license. If the board decided they wanted to make the license till midnight the first year and then we go and see how that is, I don't have a problem with that, because then we can take baby steps to move forward and see how things are. I think last year, 30 licenses in a year gave a pretty good learning curve of how this establishment was operated. That's without having an actual professional manager, because it's pretty hard to hire a professional manager with only 30 events. So I'm just trying to lend a little bit. Brent, when we talk technology, you give a little bit of insight to me, because I don't know a lot about that. But I'm just going to try to infer this. And I know this is not going to please everybody in Seacoast Shores, but I surely hope that you'll all still be neighbors, you'll all still say hello to each other, no matter which way this vote goes this evening. But respect other people. That's a great part of America, is that because we do something, I go to one church, doesn't mean that I discourage someone else from going to another. Because someone drinks alcohol should not be the curse of the world for somebody else. And it's not a requirement of that. So that's kind of my feelings to the board. I think I could support a license here, and even if the board wanted to restrict it, because I think that's where we're better served in the community, to be able to make sure that the folks are tip-trained. We can observe that. We have a liquor control enforcement officer in this community who goes to see those new establishments, talks to them about what the requirements are. So those are all parts of the process. Go ahead, Brent.
You make some good points, Mr. Chairman. But I guess one of the things that I look at is that I don't see that anything would change one way or the other. I would say that although we could argue that a liquor license gives us control over the situation, I don't think the association would want to lose control with or without a license. So I think the incentive there, it exists one way or the other, whether there's a license or there isn't. And as was noted before, the license doesn't make the institution. I think the organization is going to survive one way or the other, with or without the license. And I think it'll succeed with or without the license. I think the individuals who are leading the organization and who are members thereof they're vested in it one way or the other. And I think they want to see it succeed. With that said, I guess I'm still of the mind that I can't agree with granting this license. And the reason why is because it really comes down to a question of, is it an appropriate place to have a club license? Is it an appropriate place to have an organization or an entity? I think an organization is probably the wrong term here. An entity which is potentially going to be open 365 days a year serving alcohol. More importantly, an entity which is open to 120 guests, according to the information available online. And as I understand a club license, it would be simply one individual could perhaps host a party, they could host a wedding function, and all 119 other individuals who come to that function don't necessarily have to come from the neighborhood. Granted, there will probably, and I think there have been obviously, and there probably still will be, neighborhood-only functions where people will walk there. But the question is what happens during the other days of the year? And how many other cars are going to show up there? Where are they going to park? And what arrangements will be made? And I guess those are questions that really haven't been answered this evening. The organization is an admirable one, and I wish it the best. I think the success is evident so far, but I don't think The question tonight is whether or not the organization should or should not exist. I don't think the question tonight is whether or not the organization should or should not be doing the things that it's doing to improve the neighborhood. There's no question about that. The question is, does an entity, should there be an entity there open 365 days a year to 120 guests per night, and what is that going to have? What kind of impact is that going to have on the neighborhood? And that question was never answered tonight. There was a lot of talk about the good that the organization does, and that's, without a doubt, the organization does good. But I don't see that we've had any, again, I'm repeating myself here, I guess. I don't see that the significant question has been answered this evening, so I can't support this license.
Okay. I just want to say one other thing, though, and give you an illustration. If they open if they open this and the seating design doesn't provide for separate areas, if they open this to functions, that would eliminate the use of the members on those function evenings. And I can give you an illustration. Falmouth Yacht Club does not hold functions in the summer months, because that would eliminate the membership from using the yacht club facility for dinner on those evenings. So they don't have the ability to do functions because it eliminates the membership. Now, members would love to have their child's wedding there on 4th of July, but all the members would like the use. I'm not going to get into telling folks how to run their operation, but the scenario of functions are that they're usually in the off-season when the membership is not generally using them. I agree with you that you would get some off-Cape people, or maybe even some folks from North Falmouth that might go to a wedding of someone there. But typically, you would then be closing the facility down to its regular membership. So that's just a side point on that. Thanks. David?
No, I really don't have any much to say other than the person who would, I don't have your name, I forget it here, who had the engineering background with traffic. The only thing I can answer is, in 2011, there was one motor vehicle accident at 28. In 2012, there was 5 at 28, 1 at Ellsworth, and 1 at Harvard. So that's 8 in 2 years. That's all I wanted to mention to the person who got no. I really have nothing else to say at this point, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Doug?
Just want to clarify that the club liquor license, the hours are set by the club. We could restrict it, but right now it's 11 a.m. to 1 a.m.
That's current, that's what they're proposing, but we have the.
I couldn't find that in where that is listed, those hours. Is
Well,
that
it'll
just-
be listed on the license, actually, the license itself. We set the hours, right?
And that's what they're requesting, is 11 a.m.
That's what they're.
To 1 a.m.?
11 to 1 a.m. Well, does the board, anyone on the board want to make a motion, or the lack thereof?
I will make a motion to approve the license, and with the hours of 11 a.m. to 1 p.m.
1 a.m.
1 a.m., 11 a.m. to 1 a.m., sorry about that. And we've had so much discussion now, I can't even recall if there were any restrictions that anyone was even thinking about placing on it. I know one of the restrictions would be that the current proposed manager, that you replace the current proposed manager as soon as possible with a full-time resident. So
there's
that
a-
would be my comment.
Okay, there's a motion to approve from 11 a.m. to 1 a.m. Sunday hours.
11.
Same, 11 to 1. Let's just make that, I want to make sure that
11, yes.
11 to 1, okay.
11 to 1.
So there's a motion. Do I have a second on that, even for
Second.
discussion purposes?
Second.
Second. All right, any discussion from the board on this? Okay, no further discussion? I'll call for the vote then. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
Okay, the ayes carry. Thank you.
We'll make you proud.
I hope so.
Folks, we have a lot of business to conduct this evening. If you could make your way out.
That's a tough vote.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there were somebody like Winnie.
I gotta sign this one. I was trying to give my attention to the
I don't know why Diane thought that would only take 10 minutes. I didn't see it till it was too late.
So much for 5.
Much.
Tonight on that. If we would have had to wait all night.
At least we got most of the summary of action done, huh?
Hour delayed. Huh?
Folks,
What's next? Oh,
um,
oh, that should be easy. Arts Falmouth.
Yep.
Is he here?
Yep.
He's standing at the door. There he is.
okay, next up this evening is approved request for a sign code variance, Arts Falmouth, Inc., banners on Main Street, from 614 to 626 and 928 to 109.
I move approval of the.
I was just going to say, all right,
Move approval of the fee waiver?
motion in a second. Roger, do you need to say anything?
I hope that you will endorse it.
So there's a motion and a second. This is for banners for Arts Alive. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Sorry to keep you.
I'm up next.
Yeah, all right, and then next up. Next up is approved request for a fee waiver, Arts Falmouth, Inc. Now, just FYI, before we get into this, I just want to note to the board, there are two different fee waivers. One would be approved by the town manager. The other would be a fee exemption approved by the board. And I'm going to read this into the record, what the board has as its criteria. Granted on request by the Board of Selectmen, events providing broad community benefit, sponsored for charitable purposes, may request a fee exemption. The sponsor must present a letter of request including financial documentation, verifying all event fees, covering the cost of the event, excluding administration, and all remaining funds are directed in a specific charitable purpose. The waiver will be recognized, the waiver will recognize events benefiting the greater good of the town above the benefit of the sponsoring organization. And incidentally, Mr. Day, thank you very much, because we requested a little further information about how much folks paid for specific booths and things of that nature, and I appreciate you getting the board that information, and whether or not folks in your organization took an administrative fees. And again, you provided that information, and I thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Board, open it up to the board's discussion. I think the board needs to make some decisions on what and how we do in fee waivers. I know each and every one of us struggle with fees in this community, specifically with the idea and the ideal of us struggling to be able to finance the future of this government and this community. I know that both Mr. Jones and Mr. Putnam are trying to uncover any potential dollars that we can find as we move to fund a capital campaign for capital improvements, and that includes potential of everything Mr. Kazarian has written about that is an idea out there, everything from meters on Main Street to super stickers to anything of that nature. So we need to take each and every one of these individually. Yes.
I did not do my homework to find out exactly what the dollar amount we are waiving or exempting from this application.
The fee under the new schedule is $100 per day.
And it's how many days a year?
3 for the first event, 1 for the second. which is a considerable amount of money for our organization, and a bit more than it represents for the town, I think.
I'll take, Mr.
You
Chairman.
okay?
I just think that you have to look at community benefit. And there's no question that Arts Alive is a huge community benefit. I mean, you can hardly get downtown sometimes if you don't come early and you park at Mullen School because you know you're going to have to walk. And it's a very vibrant event, and it's always very well attended. And I think when we have events like that that really benefit the whole community, we should consider waiving the fees.
And I'll follow up a little bit on that. Specifically, Arts Alive provides in many of its events, free entertainment. So in other words, what you're really doing is providing just free entertainment for folks who don't necessarily want to purchase anything, don't need to, they can put the family in the car and go down there and experience the arts here in Falmouth. So,
For the entire three-day period, starting with the town dance.
Right.
Everything's free.
right. So, I mean, there are different criteria, and I think that's a quality of life issue in that criteria for the Arts Live, but that's a personal opinion.
I'm going to make a motion to waive the fee.
Okay? Yeah. There's a motion and a second. Okay, now discussion. Brent?
How many, you say here in your email that you folks charge between 100 and 150 for a table?
Yes.
How many tables do you sell?
Well, if we're lucky, we sell about 50.
What, you say lucky, what's the average?
50. Could be 52 on a good year, but generally it's 48 to 50.
Okay.
I'm going to ask a question. Is it potential to move forward in next year to look to add maybe $25 to those so that we can get some fees from that group?
You know, we have tried to keep the fees low because we're interested in supporting our local artists.
Right.
Other events that are similar that take place around the Cape and perhaps in town are a great deal more expensive. And there, last year, for example, a number of events never happened because the artist didn't want to pay the fee, the promoters couldn't make any money, so the actual events never took place. We don't make money. I mean, our job is to support the arts and our local artists and to give our residents and our neighbors a good time. So we break even, and if we make some money, it'll just allow us to do a little something bigger next year. For example, the Jazz Fest in the fall, the whole Friday night jazz stroll, also free.
Okay. Anyone else in regard to motion? You go ahead, Brent.
I guess just a comment and a thought that one of my concerns is that as we start making these exemptions, the question then becomes, where does it end? And for every nonprofit organization that asks for an exemption from the entire fee, there's going to be another one queued up as they keep coming in saying, well, we're a nonprofit organization and we'd like an exemption as well. I'm wondering if a reduced fee might be something that the board could consider as opposed to a full exemption.
Yeah.
I mean, in years past, obviously, we've raised the fees. If we were to you would do a reduced fee as opposed to the full fee, I might be more inclined to support that.
I think we have that option. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Brent.
we do have that option, but I was thinking about that myself, and it isn't just a nonprofit that gets a fee waiver. If you look at the event itself, I'm thinking of this event and even the one to follow, which is the farmer's market. When you look at those and compare those to a nonprofit that's running a marathon in town, and they usually don't come from here, they come from somewhere else. And they have a lot of people that come from other places who get to enjoy the beauty of Falmouth while they're running. And so that, I would think, maybe you might want to charge a partial fee to, in a sense, a nonprofit, but they're not really, it doesn't have a total community benefit like this does. This totally benefits the town of Falmouth, where everyone can participate. With some of the marathons or the other runs that we have, only certain people actually benefit from those. It isn't a total community benefit. I mean, I was just trying to think, without having to spell everything out in writing and put it into a policy, and this is how it's going to work. Just looking at the idea of how much of a community benefit does this nonprofit provide?
And again, I didn't want to go ahead to the other event that we have on the agenda tonight. I will agree with at least part of what Brent says. Last year, you paid a fee of $100. Right now, we're looking to waive the fees totally. I think it would be at least fair to say that if we exempt, that we include at least the fee that we paid last year.
A one-day fee, like an entry fee?
Well, Mr. Chairman, just because we paid it didn't mean we
I
enjoyed it.
know, Roger, I know, Roger, but what I'm trying to say is, you're one of many groups, and we have another one after you this evening. We might as well just not charge fees for anything in this community, and then you won't have grass to be able to put on the library lawn, and we won't be able to, have the street to put the stuff on. I mean, I have a fiduciary responsibility to everybody in this community, and I trying to follow through on that same responsibility.
Yes, but it seems to me that you might be able to slice it and dice it if you thought about it a bit.
I am trying to slice it and dice it, that's right. That's why I'm trying to
I think we come
suggest-
on the zero side of that
No,
slice. Because after all, we don't make any money. This
Well,
is not a
you
fundraiser.
You spend to what you take in, I understand that.
It's community
And sometimes a
I
bit more.
I realize that, but I think $100 is fair and reasonable, rather than regress back. I don't disagree. I don't know if we would be here this evening following on what Brent said if we didn't go up on the fees. I think you would have just paid the $100 like you paid last year.
I didn't come and ask for a waiver of the tent fees, but we could discuss that if you'd like.
That's
Our
not-
fees for the entire event at the moment are going to be $600 because we have, 6 tents at $50 a pop, and then we have 3 days at $100 apiece. That's a considerable amount of money for us. And I thought that given that the tent fees represented a specific service provided by the building department, then I wouldn't push the envelope too hard, but I'd be happy to discuss it if you'd like to discuss it.
Well, those fees required are really inspectional fees.
Precisely,
They
which is why
have
I've
to
left
go
them
out
off the
and
table.
inspect those. In
Yeah.
other words, that cost for that.
I think we're getting a service for that.
Okay, thanks.
All right, it's not completely clear to me what the town is spending for us having this event on the library lawn. Zero is my response to that, actually.
Well,
I don't think it
that's
costs the
necess-
town much at all.
Okay, yes.
Actually, I'll weigh in on that because there's traffic, there's wear and tear on the library lawn, there's the use of the infrastructure. There are a lot of services that are provided within the envelope of what you get. For a $100 fee, I think it's relatively inexpensive. And I don't think anybody's debating the fact that you've given us the profit and loss. I appreciate that, and we understand that you're not making any money, but I think as the chair noted, if we were only charging $100, I think that would be fair, and I don't think there'd be any question of the fee being paid, so.
Would you then waive the fee or have the fee for the fall event?
I would say $100 for the combined,
That's
is
right.
what I would suggest.
$100 for both events? I'll go with that.
That's what you paid last year, that's what I'm saying.
And just to be clear,
Both
this is not
events,
for the
as
library
I
lawn.
understand it.
That none of this fee covers library lawn because the library lawn is not.
I was going to say it's not your problem anyway, so.
But the
I'll
town
amend
does
my
pay
motion
for
to
that.
include $100 for both events.
Second.
Motion in the second. The only reason I said the $100 is because that's what you had on this P and L, was $100 total fees.
We have to face the reality. We assume we have to pay everything all the time.
Okay, I know, what I'm saying is, I was talking about last year, did you pay a fee in the fall and the spring?
Certainly.
So there was $200 instead of $100 on your expense sheet.
Well, I gave 2 expense sheets, one for each event. I believe the fees for the spring event are $600 because of the tents. Actually, it should be $610 because we have a food permit as well. And then in the fall, there's a $100 fee for Peg Noonan.
Well, it's not included in the mass fee, that's fair.
So $100 for both events, I think, I would say thank you.
So the motion and the second. Any further discussion from the board? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next up, well, okay, yes, it is. Approved request for fee waiver for Falmouth Farmers Market. We did request some additional information from you folks, and they never received that information at Town Hall?
No, I sent that in like a couple days after we presented to you.
No. She sent you an email requesting the information and that we reviewed today with the town. I know, but we requested specifically how much you charge per person. And one of the other scenarios was, are there any actual paid folks within your organization?
You did get a P&L.
No, I know we get the P&L,
Okay.
but we
Oh,
asked
okay. I'm just
for
making
further
sure that we're talking
information.
about the same thing
We
here.
asked for further information, the office did.
That,
Julie, do you have?
actually, I sent an email to Diane saying, do you have everything you need? Please let us know if you need anything amended. All right, so what we charge our vendors daily, this is your first question here, is, it's not a daily, well, there are some daily
Well,
vendors.
the question is, we can, and I'm sure you don't want to do this, but we can hold this off to next week so you can give the board all this information. That's what I'm saying. Mr. Day was asked the same questions, and he provided that further information.
Okay, I don't know how I did not see
Okay.
this. Can we do this here?
We can try to do this here
Okay.
if you're prepared to do it.
I think I am.
Okay, go
Okay.
ahead.
May I also just, sorry, I'm a member of the board. My name is Patricia Gadsby. Normally, Diane Davidson has been sending emails to the board as well, and we did not, I certainly did not receive this.
Okay.
Nonetheless,
All right.
I'm ready to
Okay.
answer your questions. So we have a seasonal fee structure, which is if the vendor pays in advance, we give them a slight discount.
You
So
have to
it's,
tell us the actual amount.
I'm going to.
Okay.
It's $380
Mm-hmm.
for a vendor if they pay in advance. If they don't pay in advance, it's $420, and normally that's broken up as a two payment kind of thing for vendors that
And
have
for how many?
That's for 21 weeks.
21, okay.
If you are a vendor who, for instance, we have a vendor who has blueberries, so she's only there 4 weeks approximately. So that's $25 for each event for her. And similar, seasonal, or not, sorry, weekly type vendors. We don't have many of those. Most of our vendors, I'm trying to think of the exact number, approximately 15 of our vendors are full season vendors. I am the only person of the board who does receive compensation, so I get $20 an hour approximately for the 21 weeks while I'm there at the market. But it is also volunteer activities that I do with the board
Can you
year-round.
give us a grand total?
Oh, grand total,
Ballpark?
$5,000.
Okay.
How many seasonal vendors are there?
Well, it changes from year to year, but approximately 18 to 20.
And then others that are not so.
Sorry, let me restate that. It's about 15 that are full-time seasonal vendors, and then probably another 4 or 5 that are weekly, intermittently attending.
Okay.
And other than that, I would like to mention then, also on the P&L, which we included, based on taking care of the park last year, with materials and labor, ballpark, we put in about $1,400 worth of our time. So basically, not only are we nonprofit, but that puts us at a zero at the end of the year. So that's the administrative costs for my compensation.
Okay, now let me ask you a question. I know going from here to there was a rather drastic jump for you this year.
Yeah.
Meaning,
Meaning the fee?
that's correct.
Right.
Right. I mean, you have a host of dates, 21, whereas some of the other events we have were 3s and 4s. Right now, you're asking for a fee waiver, which is 0. Can we start moving incrementally to find a way to get your fees more in line, I didn't say there, to fees of what other folks are paying in this community? So rather than go to 0, is there a way that we could look to get a third of the fees? I'm throwing this out at you here now, this year, and then you look to make increases in your rates next year to be able to, at least gives you some planning.
Well, couple things. It is going to be very hard for us it was suggested in previous meetings that just go ahead and pass these new fees on to our vendors. That's going to be a big jump for them, too. Falmouth already has the highest fees, not only us as the farmers market, compared to other farmers markets on the Cape. We do have some of the higher fees, and so does the town already through the temporary mobile permits that you guys charge, or that the Board of Health charges. So we are kind of at the higher end, so to pass that off to our vendors is going to be difficult to do. So we are hoping to follow up with what you had suggested to Arts Alive, which is do the $100, which is not going backwards, and then based on what we are doing as a donation to the town by taking care of the park, $1,400 is a significant donation of our time and materials to help maintain the park, which we obviously plan to continue to do, and we'd like to take on a more active role. Actually, we learned, unfortunately, that Rocky Gomes had some health issues recently, pretty significant. So we want to find out from you, maybe tonight, who we should contact at the DPW. In the past 2 years, we've been coordinating with Rocky to help maintain the park. But we'd like to take on kind of the whole piece of reseeding and maintaining the garden beds right up front. We can get going on that, spring's here now, so we could start doing that immediately. That would be a much bigger role than we played last year. Last year, they did the aeration and the seeding. We did the watering and things like that, but we do all of that for the spring and fall maintenance. And that would be a significant donation, I think, to the town, instead of in lieu of the fees. That would be what we like to see the town approve.
That's a separate issue, right? I mean, that issue, and I think you need to deal with Rocky or his successor in regard to that, because we did have those discussions at the last meeting. There was some ideas of maybe we shouldn't go and watering that park. There was some idea. That's not my area of expertise, and I would much prefer the Parks Department or his successor to be able to handle that part of that. And I think the town manager's office could probably direct you that way.
Well, one thing that is not, you didn't have the information at the last meeting, which is the financial investment that we've made by taking care of the park. And I think $1,400 of materials and labor is significant. So that would be nearly half of the fee that you want to charge. So in lieu of that $2,300 fee, which is 3,000% increase of what we've been paying, if we're paying nearly half of that fee in material and labor, and this is going to be even a bigger investment of our time to get on the front end of taking care of the park by seeding and aerating now. Last year, we didn't get to do any of that with Rocky. They had other scheduling issues. They didn't get to do that till mid-May, so we never had a chance to get onto that. I know that's a DPW thing too, but they're definitely directly related.
Right, and again, I'm not going to get into that tonight because I think they had some areas that they didn't want the park seeded in the spring, if I remember right. So I'm not going to second guess the professional staff. All right, so we can deal with, I appreciate your offer, but I think we need to coordinate it through them, whether it be Rocky or whoever is going to take over for
I totally understand that. I'm just saying,
Okay,
it
great,
is a financial investment on our part
okay.
to take care of the park.
And I think we should consider that as part of this, because, I'm looking at the profit and loss for the Arts Alive, and there's nothing in their profit and loss that indicates that they're actually giving anything back to the town. Granted, they bring business to the town, and it's a wonderful event, but what the farmer's market does is they actually acknowledge and have put in the time and labor to address the concerns that have been raised in years past about the use of Peg Noonan Park, and I think that should be taken into consideration. Whether we make that a requirement or try to put a specific dollar amount on that, I don't know how the board wants to proceed, but I certainly would be inclined to stick with the $100 with the expectation that they would continue to do some sort of, whether it's financial or in-kind donation, as they have in the past, to support the beautification of the park and the maintenance thereof, so.
Can I ask one other question? Materials and labor, and I will wholeheartedly say labor is the more valuable, but have you any ballpark in the breakdown of what that is?
Yeah, about $200 to $300 in materials.
Okay.
So
All right.
plants.
And the reason I'm asking that is the fact that you specifically mentioned in your letter about weeding and things of that nature. There may be something more valuable for you to do that Rocky would want you to do than something like weeding, if you follow what I mean. I don't know.
He
Yeah.
specifically asked us to.
Okay, so in other words, I'm following
Well,
up with
can I just mention one thing?
Yeah.
So when we first started helping Rocky, when there were issues with the grass and things like that, he indicated that the town used to have, I can't say full-time or what the number of hours, but they had a person that was paid to take care of the park outside of the DPW staff member. And then the town, as the economy got tight, had to let that person go. So I don't know if, he indicated it was not a staff person, it was sort of a subcontracted position. And so I don't know what that budget was, but I'm just mentioning because obviously they were weeding and mulching and pruning and things like that. And that hadn't been done for a couple of years because they had to let that person go, so.
Yeah, actually, this all came about because we started to notice that there was a lot of vine growing over the back plantings, and volunteer trees were sprouting up and becoming very visible. And so we felt that we should try and do something about it.
Okay. Yeah, Doug.
Could I just clarify something? You said that Falmouth Farmers Market is one of the most expensive ones for permits?
Yeah.
With the town charging $100, where's all the expense that you're charging? I mean, why? If the town's only charging $100 for the permit, where are the expenses that are making it so expensive for the vendors?
Insurance. Our insurance, I don't know if you have a copy of the P&L, but our insurance is $1,200.
But other farmers markets must have that cost. I mean,
True.
So which is it that's Falmouth's costs that make us more expensive than other farmers markets?
The Board of Health fee is,
75 as
yeah,
opposed to 10.
most towns are 10, we're 75. I don't know if our insurance here is more because of, that I couldn't talk to because we get that through Massachusetts Department of Ag. So just, I mean, all the fees that we pay for the accountant, supplemental needs trust, sorry. It's a different issue in my life. Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, we're the only market on the Cape that has that as of 2 years. We're the first, but now there's one other. That's a significant fee, that's, $800 a year for us to have that so that residents of our community can come and use that. It's a EBT type machine, and it provides produce or allows people of low income means to get produce at our market. That's a big
That's
cost to
certainly a community
us.
service that we are
Right.
providing that has direct benefit.
Right.
I would move that we go with $100, but put on record as to what our fee schedule is, with the hope that we can receive in kind or through the beautification of Peggy Park, trying to hit that total figure with the addition of with the sum of $100 plus what they do.
So the total figure is like 2,100. Are you saying to get to that figure with the in-kind?
I thought the total figure was more in the $3,000 range.
thought
I
that-
said, sorry, it was a 3,000% increase
Yeah.
from the fee
21
structure
dates,
from
if I'm
last
not
year. That's a
mistaken,
big
right?
bump. I'm sorry, excuse me?
21 dates, right?
21 days.
So the fee would have been 2,100.
Okay, I was just.
Actually,
I was
sorry,
using-
correction, plus the two holiday markets, so
it is
that
20
makes
for
it.
the two holidays.
Right, so
Oh,
it makes it
okay,
23.
okay.
But the regular season is 21 weeks.
So you're saying the
I guess I-
$100 and then in-kind services to the additional $2,200? Is that what you're saying?
And I would also say that there's a chance that this is not a exemption for the future, that we may need to, as the Capital Advisory Committee looks at every way of getting some funds, you may need to be prepared for the vendor fees to go up, to get ready for the future.
Okay. Yes, did you?
I'd like to make one more point, and that is that increasing, if we had to pass along the increase in fees, the people that it would hurt most would be the smallest and most local of our farmers, precisely the farmers that this market was designed to help support.
Well, there's other ways to do that, too. You could give a discount for a Falmouth farmer versus something else. I'm not going to tell you how to do that, but there are other ways to do that in the future. He's talking about the future, but there are other ways to do that. In other words, if it's someone who actually has a small market, small farm here in Falmouth, you could keep their fees the same and try to raise fees. That's really kind of what we're talking about.
I'll second the motion.
So that was the motion. Second. Any further discussion from the board? Any public comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Yes, we'll take a 2-minute stand-up break if our board Okay, welcome back. The board took a brief recess. Next up is report and discuss and vote water filtration Long Pond treatment feasibility study. Tate and Howard, February 2013, final report, treatment options, funding request, DPW Director Ray Jack. Mr. Jack.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everyone. I realize that you have time constraints this evening. You're certainly running late, and you still have a few things to do, and I know there's going to be 3 presentations in short order here, so I'll try to speed it up a little bit if I can. The consultants, Tate and Howard Incorporated, as well as CH2M Hill, were the joint consultants on this project, and they are here this evening. Patrick O'Neill is a professional engineer and is the project manager for the feasibility study, and Dr. Russell Ford is also here, and he is representing CH2M Hill. The presentation that I prepared should not be too long. It's just intended to really recap, not so much for the board as much as it is for the public, if you will, on where we are and how we got here, and hopefully a little bit about where we may be able to go. As the board's aware, we had the last presentation in December, and now the board has the final report of that feasibility study. So this will attempt to address where we left off at that time, and then hopefully give the board the information in order to make a determination for the town meeting vote. I know I normally give a presentation from here, but someone apparently absconded with the remote control for the laptop, so everyone else is going to have somebody operating the laptop for their presentation. We're here because of a regulatory requirement, namely the long-term, that's okay, long-term 2 interim enhanced surface water treatment rule, which basically requires that we have to do something with Long Pond in the form of a capital improvement. At a minimum, we would have to add additional disinfection and or build a filtration plant. So we initiated a feasibility study in order to look at what the options might be. Study was completed last year. The options and the costs were presented in December of 2012. From a decision-making perspective, the option selection will be initially with the Board of Selectmen. So hopefully this evening will be the beginning of that process, especially for design. And that'll be followed by a town meeting, who will hopefully appropriate the money for the design funding on what the option is going to be. For every problem, there's a solution, and for every solution, there's actually a 3-dimensional assessment, especially when it comes to any type of government project. So the first would be a political dimension. The town, meaning you, and town meeting, is going to be expected to have to deal with the funding issues for whatever the options are going to be. You have the legal authority, because this is a regulatory mandate that requires a funding option, so you have the legal responsibility to ensure that we're able to comply with what those requirements are going to be. And of course, one of the bigger political concerns that any body politic is going to have is going to be the public acceptability of whatever the issue happens to be. That's followed by a societal dimension. Primary concern of the general public is going to be public health, and they're going to want to know what the need is. Generally, that need is driven by a public health concern, and of course, the costs, especially when we're talking about large-scale capital improvements, are always going to be an issue for the public as well as the town. Then the technical dimension, this is also a scientific dimension, but basically it determines that you're able to actually complete what it is that you need to complete. So you start out with a risk assessment, and that, for all intents and purposes, was the feasibility study. And that will outline what the technological options or scientific options may be. And then it usually provides an avenue in order to determine, after you've determined what the risks are, is how you're going to be able to best manage those risks. So in order for a resolution to be considered successful, it has to be technologically feasible. economically viable, and politically and socially acceptable. Quite frankly, of the three here, the first one's relatively easy because you can usually engineer a result. As far as the economy goes, that's different wherever you happen to be. Towns operate differently. Some have more, some have less. But in all cases, the political / social issue is usually one of the driving forces. I'm going to come back to that a little bit later. In this particular case, in the 19 years that I've been here, I think that this is probably going to be one of the largest and most important public health decisions that the town is going to make for a very long time. It involves the economic health of the community health overall, and certainly because it is a drinking water initiative, it involves the personal health at every individual level. The drinking water objectives are also part of the drinking water characteristics that we would normally deal with. So we start out with physical objectives or physical characteristics and what the expectations are. From a drinking water perspective, you want the water to be clear or clean. It should have no appreciable taste, thereby be tasteless, and I know a lot of people think that water tastes good, but good water actually has no taste. It just quenches the thirst and or feels cool to the palate. And it's certainly supposed to be odorless. From a chemical perspective, we want it to be chemically safe and non-corrosive. Non-corrosive really deals with the distribution system, and that has to do with the lead and copper rule more than anything. If the water has corrosive characteristics, it's capable of leaching lead and copper into the water, and this would occur at the consumer's tap or in the individual homes. So it is the town's responsibility to render it non-corrosive, not the homeowner's responsibility. And then lastly, we have the microbiological characteristics. We would expect it to be pathogen-free. Pathogens are those bacteria that are considered harmful to man. So we're looking for a safe water to drink and a nuisance-free water, and that's particular to Falmouth and/or a surface water source, predominantly because of algae and/or other suspended solids that might be in the water. Probably one of the most important things, though, in determining what avenues to take and what treatment options to select is not just dealing with whatever the issue is at hand. And I know that the boil water order of 2010 is still sensitive in everyone's mind. But we also have to be thinking about what the future is going to be. We're going to have a large-scale capital investment no matter which option is selected. And you want to be able to ensure that either it can, by itself, handle future issues, or that it's capable of adapting to those future issues. So some of the things that we really have to be concerned here, there are over 300 chemicals currently on the contaminant candidate list, and I know I don't have that acronym up there, but that's the federal list for the contaminants that they are looking to regulate in the foreseeable future. CECs are contaminants of emerging concern, so those are on that list. Under CECs would come PCPs and pharmaceuticals. PCPs are personal care products, and the pharmaceuticals are of concern along with PCPs because of how they get into the water supply. If they are found to be in a public water supply, it's indicative of septic and/or sewer contamination because that is how they are getting there. They're being flushed down the toilet or disposed of on a property and winding up infiltrating into the water supply. On Cape Cod, these have been found in the public water supplies and also nationwide. But that's predominantly because we have a surface water aquifer. It is a water table aquifer, so it is impacted by whatever occurs on the surface. Other areas of the country have more protected aquifers that are below a confining layer such as clay or something like that. But these are going to be an issue for the future, and I would also like to stress here, and especially with something like pharmaceuticals or personal care products, these are generally hazardous chemicals, but we measure currently in parts per million and/or parts per trillion, or parts per million or parts per billion, generally now. These are measured in parts per trillion. So it's a much, much smaller increment of the chemical, but the effects are felt at the DNA level. So it doesn't take a lot at the DNA level. So most of the contaminants we're normally dealing with and most of the concentrations we're dealing with are for adults and an adult physiology. These were the costs that were given, their revised cost as far as the O&M was adjusted, and therefore the present worth costs were adjusted after the December meeting, but the project costs have remained the same. And one of the things, and I won't go over all of these, but you can see on the low side that for ultraviolet and chlorine disinfection to accomplish compliance with long-term 2 rule would be $16.3 million, and then at the high end of the range, we have $47 million for coagulation process, followed by dissolved air flotation, ozone, granular activated carbon, and then ultimately chlorine for the disinfection system. So I'm going to be going over these again on the next slide. This is a comparison that you had in the study, which was red and green dots, and these have been converted to backgrounds instead. But what's important here across the top, we have what we are attempting to achieve with these treatment processes. We know we have a regulatory compliance issue, but then the question becomes, what else is it that we need to accomplish from a regulatory perspective and a community perspective? So the first one, the first column there is reduced DPBs. DPBs are disinfection byproducts. So we're normally concerned with those when we have the addition of chlorine, and you can see that virtually all of these have the addition of chlorine as a disinfectant in a post-disinfection capacity, meaning it's intended not so much at the plant. Right now we have to use it at the plant because it's the only form of protection that we have. But this is generally used widespread in a distribution system in order to maintain bacteriological protection in the system. Compliance with the long-term 2 enhanced surface water treatment rule, that's the regulation that we're up against at the present time. Tastes and odors are very important, and I'm going to be getting back to those a little bit later on. Effectively handle algae is because we have a surface water source. Pilot performance, this is how well those particular processes perform during the pilot study, and whether or not it removes color. Long Pond has been relegated to a standby status for a significant period of time this year, and that's predominantly because of color and dissolved organics. So the only one here that meets all of the objectives across the board happen to be the most expensive option, which is item number 2 up there. The first one, coagulation followed by DAF and granular media filtration and followed by chlorine, was slightly less at $39.3 million, but it's left with a taste and odor issue because it will not be able to resolve the taste and odors. The way the public relates to water is somewhat different than the way we relate to water. We meaning those who would be responsible and or manage the system. The public relates to them based on what they see, what they smell, and what they taste. So for these types of scenarios, you could have a glass of water sitting in front of somebody that looks clean, smells good, tastes great if you were thinking about taste, and it could be loaded with arsenic and drop them in a second. But this is the perception that the public has, and it's a very important one. So this goes back to that taste and odor issue, that whatever we do as far as resolving the regulatory issue and then trying to resolve our water quality issues, we want to try to make sure that in the end we do not wind up with taste and odor issues out in the system, because the public's confidence is going to be completely destroyed at that point. So for them, whenever they have either a bad tasting water or discernible odors, and if the water is discolored in any way, shape, or form, for them it's going to be a concern, and that doesn't matter if it's a real or perceived concern. It could be safe for all regulatory requirements, but that's not how the public is going to perceive it. So one of the things that accomplishes a lot of that and makes the difference between that first treatment train and the second treatment train is this one product, which is ozone. Ozone's a chemical form of treatment. It occurs when you pass oxygen through an electrical charge, and oxygen in its normal state is O2, and when it's passed through an electrical charge, it becomes unstable and becomes O3. So that is what ozone is, and the ozone that we're talking about in the atmosphere is created through lightning strikes that occur in the atmosphere. So that's how it's regenerated. But ozone is very, very effective at the reduction of taste, odors, and color. Effective at reducing the contaminants of emerging concern, primarily because most of those contaminants are synthetic organic products. And ozone, being unstable and being a powerful oxidant, is capable of reacting very strongly with organic compounds. It's a very effective in pathogenic inactivation. I use the term inactivation as opposed to destruction. Inactivation by a chemical means or even with ultraviolet doesn't mean that the organism disappeared. It just means that either its cellular wall was destroyed, which affects its metabolism, or it affects its reproductive capability. But it is still there. And it's also effective in reducing disinfection byproducts. And that's a second regulatory component that we're going to have to be concerned with. If we were to go with an additional disinfectant at Long Pond, we would still have to use chlorine on a very large scale. If you put chlorine in contact with organic matter, you form trihalomethanes and haloacetic acids. Those are known and suspected carcinogens. We are regulated along those categories, and we are required to do sampling for those as well as do our quarterly and annual reporting on that. That law or regulation is changing. Before we had an annual average. Now we're going to have a running locational average. So it's going to be much more difficult for us to be able to maintain compliance if we use chlorine in a large scale. So because of that, my recommendation is very similar to the recommendation in the report, which is design money of $3.4 million, which has all of the processes that would be necessary to accomplish all of the objectives. That would occur during 2013 and 14. To fund in a future date, meaning another year from now, a $47 million plan option, and that was the preferred option in the report, and that would take place in April or May of 2014, April being town meeting, May being the ballot election. And then to build that plant, which is dissolved air flotation, followed by ozone and granular activated carbon filters, and that would take place in 2014 and 15. Of course, the problem always is balancing the costs against the risk. And I know that during the December meeting, the board did have its concerns about the town's ability to be able to fund those kinds of initiatives at this time. So as an alternative, what the board had asked for is, would we be able to appropriate design money in order to ensure that that plant process stream would be able to accommodate any insertion of a process that would be necessary for the future, so we could fund $3.4 million design this year. And then next year, fund a $39.5 million plant, which means that the one component that would be taken out of the treatment process would be ozone. So it would be a DAF plant, followed by filtration, followed by chlorination. Because the ozone option would be taken out, and that would be a reduction of about $7.5 million. It would also reduce the operating cost by about $200,000 a year. And then we would be building that plant with just the ozone emitted. But the issue really is a water quality issue. It's not just a regulatory issue. And one of my bigger concerns for the town, for the board, would be to build a plant and wind up with a problem immediately thereafter. And as I said, that problem only has to be a perceived problem. And if it's either taste, odor, and/or color that makes it out into the system, we will have accomplished very little in the form of instilling public confidence. This statement made by President Clinton was 1996. That was during the reauthorization of the Safe Drinking Water Act. And then during the subsequent reauthorization, which occurred in 2006, is when the surface water rules changed. And those are the rules that we're going to have to comply with now. They came available at the federal level in 2006 and were adopted by Massachusetts in 2008. So in my view, ultimately, what we're looking at here is not just a capital project, not just a cost, but actually an investment for the future. I think that an investment in clean water for Falmouth is going to be in everyone's best interest. It's going to be in the economic health of the entire community. We do not want to see another boil water order or any water-related incident in the future. And that's not just from a business perspective, but it's certainly just from a public health perspective. And I think that it's our responsibility to have to be able to wrestle with those issues. So for me, I look at it as an investment and not a cost. But if there are any questions, as I said, our consultants are here this evening. Be happy to answer any questions you may have on the report or any of the issues.
I have one question, Ray. If we can go back to the process comparisons and/or the process costs, and for the sake of just being able to talk about these once we get there.
That needs some more lights.
Sure. Do you want to give us, well, maybe a little more light, so we can still see the board then when we get back there? Yeah, that's great. All right, so if we were to number these 1 through 8, number 7 appears to have everything except effectively handle the algae. Unless that gray area, what is that gray area?
We didn't test it.
I'm sorry, the
gray box.
The 2 gray boxes mean that it was insufficient data was available during the pilot testing in order to determine if it could meet those objectives.
Okay. The reason I asked this question is option number 7 gives us a cost of $34 million. And the option that we're ultimately looking at is $58 million. Could we take option number 7 and then add the potential for the one thing that we don't do, effectively handle the algae?
Okay, which option are you talking about, though? Because
Let's, the second from the bottom.
Ozone, UV, chlorine.
Ozone, UV, and chlorine.
Could you do it?
Could we design that we could build a plant that would eventually handle the one thing that it doesn't handle, effectively handle the algae, but build a plant that does everything else, but have the capability in the design to do everything eventually? Do you follow what I mean?
Yes, I do. That's not really a plant. Those are strictly additional disinfection processes. So that's not a filtration plant at all. None of those 3 processes up there, they're all the disinfection forms. So you have ozone, which is a chemical disinfectant that you would create on site and introduce into the water. Ultraviolet radiation is a disinfection process. It's not chemical in nature, it's physical in nature, using ultraviolet radiation. And then followed by chlorine, which is a chemical disinfection process. All of those are strictly processes to hit that water with something. They are removing absolutely nothing. And it's not much different, believe it or not, than where we are right now.
Why does that still get a green in the reducing DBPs? I would think that that would still end up having a good deal.
Because of the ozone.
Okay.
The ozone has the ability, disinfection byproducts really deal with organic matter when it has humic and fulvic acids, all right, or dissolved organic matter. And ozone, being a powerful oxidant, has the ability to heavily react with organic matter and reduce it to simpler substances and things of that nature. And then chlorine follows that process as well. Those would have chemically changed at that point. And I want to give you a very brief, simple example of chlorine and the formation of a trialomethane. Think of the second part of the term, methane. You're starting out with a methane molecule, which is CH4. So you're going to have hydrogen in the center followed by 4 carbon atoms on the outside. What happens when you smack it with chlorine and or bromine, different chemicals like that, but specifically chlorine, it will displace the carbon molecules off of the hydrogen. And depending on how many of them it displaces, it changes into an entirely different substance. All right, so if 1 gets displaced, it's one thing. If 2 gets displaced, it's another thing. And those are carcinogenic compounds. So that's the problem. We create them. The natural organic matter of them by itself is not carcinogenic until you put it in contact with organic matter. So This will still keep us in line under the new disinfection byproduct rule, only because we are introducing ozone first. But that is not a treatment plant. It is strictly an additive. You are going to add things like chlorine or ozone chemicals in order to chemically treat the water, but it's not going to remove anything. So everything that is in that pond will continue to pass on out into the system, and it can wind up causing problems down the road in the system.
But my only question is, it hits all of the major points for $20 million less, with the exception of effectively handling the algae. And is there a way to handle the algae, add that to that system?
No.
Okay.
Not without building a plant.
Well, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah. You would have to build a plant behind that in order to handle that.
There would be still some other suspended things in addition to algae. It isn't just, I mean, if we're not doing filtration, there's still things that are suspended in the water that can still get through if we're just adding chemicals.
With that, yes, yes. And from a filtration perspective, when you look at these different processes, and I'm going to give you a couple of them right here. Direct membrane filtration, followed by granular activated carbon is one, and coagulation with granular media filtration and chlorine. The coagulation process in that is different than the one that's being recommended for the first two options of dissolved air flotation. Those are very effective at removing algae. This one is not as effective. It's intended for different purposes. The GMF, or granular media filtration, is a dual media, but it doesn't have the granular activated carbon that the second option has. And that becomes important from an organic perspective. When I talk about synthetic organic chemicals, or SOCs, volatile organic chemicals, or VOCs, or humic and fulvic acids, any and all of those have one thing in common, and that is carbon in their molecular structure. And what's important about the second option, or the more expensive option, is having GAC, or granular activated carbon, as part of the filter itself. And carbon-based compounds have a natural affinity to be attracted to carbon. So it's very effective at removing a lot of the dissolved organics that become problematic. The easiest way to describe it is a pure water filter, or a Brita water filter. Everybody wonders what makes them so effective at removing these harmful products that are in the water. What you are looking at in there, it has a filter strainer, yes. It'll take out particulates, but it's the things you can't see that really cause a lot of problems, that are the carcinogenic compounds. And it's because they are absorbed onto the carbon in that filter. This is just that on a big scale.
Okay, right.
I got a few questions. You've got green and red here, but it can't be black and white. I mean, what makes the difference between green and red? Was it green was 50% effective and the red was only 49% effective? I mean, what's the distinction that? Where's the difference? I guess is it really just black and white, or was there a scale? When we talk about, for example, on the first treatment train, taste and odor came out red, but on the second treatment train it came out green. Was it because on the first treatment train it was 49% and on the second it was 51%? I mean, where's the difference between the green and the red?
I would have to refer to our consultants on that, because they actually performed a pilot study to come up with those results. But believe it or not, in a sense, it really is black and white. Disinfection byproducts, either you can meet it or you can't. It's a regulatory requirement. Compliance with this LT2 rule, either you're going to meet it or you can't. Those are numerical types of standards, if you will. But algae, that's not a numerical standard. That would be more a performance-based standard. The same thing with taste and odor. So I would defer to either Pat or Russ.
You have to come to the microphone, I'm sorry.
You want me to go to back?
No, we can just leave it right there in case we need to.
Okay.
Do you mind? In case he might need this.
That's fine. Russell Ford. So the answer to the question, as Ray was saying, the taste and odor issue, it is black and white. Because currently, you're not adding any coagulant to your water. You have algae in the water, you have the same problem. The first process is coagulant, but it's not addressing taste and odor. It's going to get rid of the algae, but you're still going to have the byproducts with the algae, and there's no way to remove them. So it is black and white. You still would have a very high chance of getting taste and odor without the ozone. The ozone destroys the, taste and odor issues, and the GAC helps absorb it. So that's why we can say that in that particular case, it's black and white, yes or no.
But, and I guess that sort of leads me to one of the other questions I had is, ultimately, and correct me if I'm wrong, the real issue we're dealing with here, because it's a surface water source, is the algae. That the algae is what causes the suspended solids, it's what causes us to have to put more disinfectant into the system, it's what causes the color problems, it's what creates the odor problems. So looking at these, if it effectively handles the algae, then why is it that it doesn't handle, I'm looking at the first one, for example, if it handles the algae, why doesn't it handle the taste and the odor? Where's the taste and the odor coming from?
The taste and odor actually comes from the byproducts of the algae. So there's a jasmine and MIB, so they're actually metabolic byproducts. So they're dissolved in the water. So even though if you remove the algae, the byproducts occur and happen, and they're present in the water column.
Okay.
So that's why.
I'm still curious where, for example, you said the effectively handling the algae was not necessarily a black and white thing. So, for example, with the second and the third options, I guess I'm confused as to what makes it green and what makes it red. Are we talking about, was there a 50% difference between the two or a 5% difference?
So in that particular case, the driver for that is the ability for the filters to perform. So we look at what we call unit filter run volume, how much water they can run before you have to clean them. And ideally, we like to get 10,000 gallons of water per square foot of filter area. That's a good filter. That means it's doing well, you're not wasting a lot of water, you're being sustainable, you're doing good stuff. Direct filtration, you don't have a clarification process up front. You're gonna probably reduce the filter, but it's gonna probably be 5,000 gallons per square foot. When you have algae present in the direct filtration, which is option number 3 there, and even without the algae, a lot of algae present during piloting, but there were some small amounts. The filters in direct filtration mode operated at like 2,000 gallons per square foot, or 3,000 gallons per square foot, which means that the filter's not performing the way it should, ideally. So if you put that design in, the short answer is yes, the filter would work, but you'd be backwashing it and very often, maybe 15 hours of 12 hours, every 12 hours you'd be cleaning the filter, wasting a lot more water, thereby not really having a plant that's running the way it's supposed to run. That's the way we judge the ability for that. So there's, so in that particular case, it's not a concrete answer, but from a productivity standpoint, industry standards are you'd like to be above 5,000 gallons per square foot on direct filtration, 10,000 gallons per square foot on a clarification process.
Okay. I'm gonna ask a question. I don't know whether it's to Ray or to you, so why don't you stand steady here. My question is, say we take your option number 2 here, and tonight we're really talking about the design. But when we go to implement, and we decide we want to phase this in other words, I know that we have to meet certain criteria right out of the gate for the state. Which parts of this option number 2 here, the second one down, will we have to do right outside the gate? In other words, can we phase this project in, design it, but only do certain parts of it until, as we can afford to do additional parts?
Okay, let's dissect it a little bit, if you will. The chlorine we're already using, so we'll forget about that for a moment. A coagulant is a chemical process. You're adding a chemical to the water in order to cause particulates in the water to agglomerate together. All right, it's similar to blood coagulating, if you will. So that's a chemical process. Dissolved air for flotation is a chemical/mechanical process. If you recall one of the other presentations, we showed you the DAF unit in operation had a big surface area of brown sludge on the top of it. Conventional coagulation, that goes to the bottom, and you would have a sludge volume on the bottom of the tank. DAF brings it up to the top. So you're adding a chemical, but it's showing you all of the things in water that it's making visible now, that it's capable of removing. If you were to not use that at all and try to run that water directly through a filter, the filter is going to clog up immediately. And it probably would have been beneficial if maybe I'd included a couple slides that show those processes, meaning What happens if you try to use filtered water that doesn't have a coagulant? I'm going to give you an example. Crooked Pond plant. We have a treatment plant up there that utilizes air stripping as the first barrier, all right, shoots the water through the air. And volatile organic gases are just dispelled off in the air. Then it goes into a clear well. Then it gets pumped through manganese green sand filters. Those are granular media filtration, all right? It has no coagulation ahead of it. We built provisions in for that, but there has none ahead of it. But why? Those are groundwater sources, so they have very little in the way of particulates, if you will, that are going to clog that filter so you get a fairly long runtime. In a surface water source with no pre-treatment, to try to run it right through a filter, you're going to clog that filter up immediately and achieve virtually none of the results. So the bigger component here is really the filter itself, if you will. The pre-treatment is absolutely necessary in some way, shape, or form. Just like even the first option up there shows, coagulation followed by DAF. So it's when you're going to have a filter plant on a surface water source, it's pretty much necessary that you have the pre-treatment. So from an engineering perspective, what the consultants were looking to do is what sacrifice theoretically could be made on that process so that we would be able to get there in the future, but yet cut the cost now, and that would be sacrificing the ozone component. That could be built to accommodate in the future.
The taste and the odor.
I'm sorry?
Which would probably increase taste and odor.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Go ahead, Brent.
Isn't there a certain amount of taste and odor that's introduced into the transmission system? And we've talked before about the fact that we have some very old pipes in town and that there's scaling inside them and so on. Obviously we can address taste and odor at the plant, but that's not going to necessarily address any taste and odor that might be imparted by the transmission system or somebody's home plumbing, or is that correct, or am I?
It is, and that would occur for a period of time. And when I say a period of time, probably years. That the water coming out of these processes, if they were going to be a filter plant, would be chemically conditioned, all right? Sodium bicarbonate is one of the additives that would come on at the end of the plant. And the purpose of that is to increase the alkalinity, increase the buffering capacity of the water, and be able to actually precipitate out onto a main in order to render it less corrosive and prevent the water from coming in contact with the main piping itself. So it can form a coating on the inside of the pipe, if you will. Phosphoric acid is another one that would help to accomplish that. But that process in an old distribution system like ours takes a fair amount of time. But what we have right on the mains now is a biological growth that exists within the mains. And once you change the characteristics of the receiving water coming into those mains, that will, over time, go away.
But not right away.
No, not right away.
So potentially we could spend $47 million on a system that is supposed to take odor and taste out, but it doesn't do it because the transmission system has that problem built into it.
It can happen. But most of the odor, at least all of the ones that I'm aware of, whenever we get into a taste and odor issue, it's not distribution related, with the exception of chlorine, the massive amount of chlorine that we have to use. So when they complain about chlorine odors, but when they're complaining about bad odors or musty odors, those are directly attributable to the quality of Long Pond at that time, whatever it may be. And even with the algae, I think that what Dr. Ford was alluding to too, is that many species of algae have odor-emitting compounds, all right? So it's not just the algae themselves, but they have toxins that they can release and odor agents that they can release that actually cause that as well. So algae is part of our odor problem, but seasonal pond turnovers and the humic acids that we have as a result of organic decomposition in the pond and the watershed, those too are part of the odor complaints. So when we get the odor complaints at the plant, I try to look at what's the nature of the complaint. Is it a musty, earthy odor? Because if that's the case, usually that's going to be attributable to humic matter or decomposition of organic matter. And if we have some of the more offensive types of odors that are more pungent are algae related as a rule. So the blue-green bacteria that you see or algae that you see that literally can turn a pond a bluish green, that floats on the surface, that's normally one of the ones we have to contend with on that. So you have the actual algae itself and the products that living organism produces can also cause problems as well as toxins.
So you're saying though, but let me follow up a little on what Brent's saying here, is that because of the ozone treatment, no one's gonna taste or smell this chlorine.
For this
That's number two.
option here, that
Right.
nobody will taste or, oh, yes, they will.
Well, you say that it eliminates taste and odor.
Mhm. But you're saying it won't eliminate the chlorine odor. If you take that
Well, that's
ozone
my
out of the
question to you.
equation,
So it won't eliminate all taste and odor, it'll just eliminate the musty smell. I want to make sure
Yeah.
that folks have the right expectations out here. Because
Right.
I don't want us to spend $50 million and then folks come in and say, I still smell the chlorine.
But with ozone, you won't be using nearly as much chlorine as we're using right now.
that's the key.
But they will have the potential to still smell it. I just want to be honest with people out there, that's all.
For a chlorine smell, yes, they
Okay.
can, but we will be using dramatically less chlorine than we have to use now. Dramatically less. Why? Because all our compliance is going to be with the treatment process itself. It's not going to be dependent upon chlorine.
It'll be all done with the copper sulfate and all that stuff as well?
Very good point. Believe it or not, yes. If we have an algae bloom, we will not have to treat the source for the algae bloom because the plant processes will be able to handle it. So it eliminates the need for a chemical treatment of the pond.
I mean, one of the things that Brent brought up too is the fact that this could take years to flush, using a layman's term, flush the system of some of those tastes and smells that are in that system, even after we accomplish this, right?
Yes, we could theoretically still have system problems out there. The mains, a lot of those mains are very old, and they have heavy incrustations and everything. As a matter of fact, the first time that we would flush them, that would manifest itself pretty quickly, because the purpose of flushing is to try to remove as much of it as possible. So we would institute an aggressive flushing program for a couple of years in order to try to eliminate a lot of that quickly.
Okay. Pat, please.
Well, I'm looking at the project cost page as well while I look at this. And on the second one, there's something called DAF. And on the first, second, third, and the sixth one, ozone coagulation, GMF. What's the difference between the GMF and the DAF?
GMF is granular media filtration. It's literally a filter, a physical straining device. It's a sand filter for the most part now. For these treatment trains, it's sand as well as anthracite coal as a media, so it's a dual media, has two types of media in it. But regardless, it is a filter. It is a physical straining device. DAF is a chemical/mechanical process that you put in a coagulant or a chemical like polyaluminum chloride. It chemically reacts with the water, and it's kind of neat how it does this in a way. Most of the things that I've described, like organics, are negatively charged. Most of the bad things in water that we want to get rid of have a negative charge. The chemical that we would add as part of that process is positively charged. So its goal is to neutralize the electrical charges, and in the absence of a charge, an opposing charge, then the particles want to come together. And the DAF process allows that to happen, and then it floats it up to the surface and a mechanical scraper removes it. So that's a pre-treatment process of it by itself that's not physically straining, but allowing a chemical and mechanical process to be able to remove some of the solids before they even get to a filter, because otherwise they would overload the filter.
When the project costs are not that different between those two process trains, but when you look at the O&M cost, the seventh one,
Yep.
1, 2, 3, the sixth one is about $100,000, a little more than $100,000 less than number two.
And it didn't work very well.
Of course, then when you look at the present worth, though, it's only like, what, 3 million less. So when you look at those numbers, it's, I don't know. Number two really has the, other than the last one, which is the membrane filtration, really has the highest O&M costs.
Yes, it does.
And what drives that? And what is it? Is it the ozone, or is it the, what process in there drives up that O&M?
The other one that you mentioned, ozone coagulation, GMF and chlorine, that has ozone as well, all right? The difference here really is granular activated carbon
Right.
and the dissolved air flotation.
And that drives up the O&M.
Yes.
David, did you have anything else? Sorry. Doug,
No,
any question?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
I'm a little reluctant to ask it because I understand you folks have a considerable deal more of expertise than I do in this, but I'm wondering, I'm looking, like, for example, at 1 and 2, and on 1 you've got the GMF, the granular media filtration, but on the number 2 option, there's the GAC, it's the granular activated carbon. Do I have these
Correct.
acronyms correct? Why don't you try the activated carbon on 1 as opposed to the media filtration? What was the decision to use that process train in that fashion versus putting something different there? And I don't know, I understand you folks have a great deal more expertise than I do, but I guess I'm just trying to understand the logic behind process trains.
Well, I think the quickest way to explain it is, I had indicated that if we took ozone off of there, it would come down to about $39.5 million. The GAC is a different type of media that would be within the filter. When you have dual media filters that are physical strainers and physical strainers only, they have a very long service life. Granular activated carbon is intended to adsorb, not just physically strain, but the process of adsorption is when the molecules will actually attach to the carbon. So that's not unlike your Brita filter as well, that periodically you can't clean it. You have to get rid of it, you have to dispose of it. But it's very effective at what it does. Now, if you just replace that carbon in that Brita filter with sand, you'll achieve some results, but it's not going to be as good as the granular activated carbon in there. And your only option when the granular activated carbon is completely used up is to dispose of it and/or replace it. So it is much, much more effective at what the town would need to accomplish, but it has a higher O&M cost, has a higher capital cost. And the other major difference, too, is between the two, that ozone is part of the second train and is not part of the first train. And ozone, as you've already seen, adds about $7 million. The difference between those filters is really in the $500,000 to $1 million range for the filters alone. I know it's a lot. I really do. I know it's a lot to absorb on all of this.
So I do have another question,
Go ahead.
if I may. So you keep comparing the GAC to a Brita filter, and clearly one of the things that Brita is good for is removing taste and odor. So in the second option, if you take the ozone out, do we really lose anything? Because it would seem to me you've got the carbon filtration like a Brita filter there, so that would take care of the taste and odor. What do we lose by taking the ozone out, other than obviously bringing the cost of that second option down?
There's a number of different chemical applications for ozone that, from a taste and odor perspective, if we're dealing with something like dissolved organics, you have total organic carbon in water, which consists of particulate organic carbon and dissolved organic carbon. The overwhelming majority of that is usually in a dissolved state. And when it's in a dissolved state, it can pass through a conventional type of filter. And even with granular activated carbon, if you do not have something to pre-treat it, such as ozone, to chemically react with it and change its condition, then it can pass through the filter and have a problem after the filter, because GAC can only handle so much. You do what's known as an empty bed contact time. You have to determine how much of this substance or contaminant is going to be applied to the filter over a period of time, and that determines its service life. So when you take the ozone out of the equation in a case like that, then you're going to increase or decrease the service life of the carbon.
I have another question. Whichever process train we decide on, would there still have to be other protections to Long Pond that are not there now? Say, for instance, public access to the pond? I mean, by having the filtration, would this make it more suitable to have people walk their dogs and all of that, because now we have this expensive filtration system there that is helpful, or because of that, do we have to, like I said, do we have to provide more protection around the pond when we have the filtration?
No, we wouldn't
No?
have to, we would not have to have more. No.
Wouldn't have to have more.
No. And there probably could be freer access.
And how does the status of Long Pond now compare, say, with other ponds that serve as drinking water supplies? Not just on the Cape, but anywhere. I mean, are there peculiar characteristics of Long Pond that cause it to be more treated than some other pond might?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Predominantly because it's a kettle hole.
Okay.
It has no tributaries feeding it. Virtually any other lake that you're going to see is going to have a river feeding it and tributaries leaving it. So therefore, it has a continuous flushing capacity, if you will. What goes in Long Pond stays in Long Pond. It's not unlike Vegas. So therein lies the problem.
I was thinking that. I'm glad you brought that up.
And without having that, it receives its water from the groundwater. What you are looking at when you see Long Pond is a visual representation of the groundwater at that location. But that's a very slow process when it takes water in through its sides and through its bottom like that.
So if you were filtrating water from a river, you might not have to have such an expensive plant, maybe, depending on the river.
I could speak to that from a Philadelphia perspective. Yes, you would.
Oh, well, yeah, in Philadelphia.
And
Yeah, I
especially the
would
bigger the
agree.
river, the more
How
treatment you
about
have.
Montana?
Because the more
Someplace.
opportunity, the bigger those boats or the bigger the ships,
Yeah.
the more opportunity for spills and problems and everything else. And the larger rivers are usually very contaminated for very long distances, and they require extensive treatment. So we're fortunate in that regard that we don't have a lot of the chemicals that other towns would have to worry about on a surface water supply. But conversely, we're also hampered by the fact that it is a pond, it is a kettle hole. Therefore, it's not flushing itself on a regular basis. So when we develop a problem, it's going to stay in there for a long time. If you have a typical lake that has a river and you have a big rainstorm, for a few days you might have a problem. Thereafter, it's nice and clean, nice and clear. For
So-
us, it's going to stay around for a long time.
And one more question. What's the average cost now of drilling a well,
About $1 million a well.
$1 million a well?
And how long does that take to get the permitting and?
Couple of years?
I guess I shouldn't laugh anymore, but when we permitted the Crooked Pond well, it took 8.5 years for the permit.
8.5 years.
8.5 years for the permit on that.
But for the same amount of money, we could get 50 wells?
Same amount of money?
In other words, we're talking roughly $45 million. We could get 45 wells?
Yeah, the capacity would be lower, meaning that you wouldn't get 45 million gallons. You would spend $45 million, but you'd get about 20 million gallons of water. But it would take a very long time. And I will say this, one of the unique aspects of Long Pond, it's a town forest. The town's had a very heavy investment in protecting that area and preserving that area for a very long time. And one of our problems, if you will, as a town, that is our largest single source. It provides up to 2/3 of the town's water supply at any given time, and it's grandfathered, permit-wise. Once you change the extraction point for that and go from a surface water intake to a groundwater system, you have changed the permitting process, and every single one of those will come under a new source permit, and we will no longer have that volume available, the grandfathering. So it's really in our best interest to preserve that volume that we have.
One last question. At our last meeting, Brett had talked about the potential of natural filtration around the pond. Was that further explored or no?
Yes, they could. I'm sure that either Pat or Russ could speak to it. I would say in general, though, that things have changed over the last 20 years because that was considered an option 20 years ago when we were looking at this at that time. But now, any of those areas out there are going to be sensitive in one way, shape, or form, and so that's why permitting would be extensive, because you're going to have wetlands out there and natural heritage and endangered species issues out there due to the natural nature of everything. The permitting process itself has become very, very cumbersome, and it doesn't change the fact that in the end, And I guess I'll go to the dissolved organics for a minute. Think about it this way. If I relate it to tea, which I did, I think, for the newspaper one time, that if you put a tea bag in there, and break the tea bag open, you have the solids of the tea that you can see, but then you have the color, which you can see as a color, but you can't touch it, you can't strain it. If you put it through a strainer, the color's still there. In a similar way, that's what happens here chemically. That bank filtration and/or wells can be physical strainers where you're taking advantage of coarse sand deposits and everything to physically strain out particulate matter from the pond, if you will. But chemically, it does virtually nothing, and especially because we're a water table aquifer. So one of the other problems we would have is this rule, and if I were to actually read the rule to you under the long-term 2 enhanced surface water treatment rule, it is applied to surface water or groundwater under the influence of surface water. And those wells out there, by today's standards, would come under groundwater under the influence of surface water. Because what we would be doing, hydrogeologically speaking, is indirectly drawing water from the pond. So anything that we did in that vicinity would have that effect, and then there would be a consequence for that.
Okay. Any other questions going on? Doug?
When I look at this chart, I actually dismiss a few of them, partly because they didn't do well the pilot performance, so I don't think they're really as viable options. You know, the third one has a nicer price, but doesn't achieve what we want to. Similar to the ones that are just the LT2s. And then if I look at the dollar figures, really they're all sort of much closer to the same general area, as opposed to having the 18 million and the 34 and the 40 million. And, you know, I know the one you're recommending is the most expensive, but it does seem like it does have the best chance of accomplishing everything we're trying to do.
And that's really it. It's protecting the investment for the town for the future. Could I say one more thing, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
I guess I've actually been dying to say this, but Selectman Putnam has always used an adage that is really profound. Why pay for a Cadillac when you can get a Ford? And the difference on this is that those have to stay on the road, whether it's a Ford or a Cadillac. The only question is how comfortable it is. But what we're really looking at here is something that'll go off-road. What we're really looking at here is an SUV. And that's really how I would characterize this. It's not so much, and I say that because of the different ranges and everything here, but for every cost, there is an associated risk, or a reduction in cost, there's an associated reduction in risk, okay? And that's what you're facing, and it's not easy. It's really not. But this is the SUV that we would need for the future.
Okay. Anybody else? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's right.
Jennifer, are you going to speak now, or are we going to do the wastewater next? Yes. Okay. Sure. Okay, hold on a minute. Go ahead. Yes? Can we move the microphone back?
Yeah, more
Could you
lights.
take- You can cue that up.
Mark Finneran, Precinct 6. Mr. Jack kind of reminds me of the kid with the 3-foot-long Christmas list. When we started the wastewater committee, the DPW came in with a design and a system that was going to cost $650 million. And for the first few weeks, the committee proceeded with that being the end. Between the members of the committee and the public comment, and a lot of hard work, and months and years, they came up with an alternative. First, there were going to be no alternatives at all. They came up with something that was going to be much less. And as we explore these alternatives, it may turn out to be much less again. I think that this method should have been used in this process. Let's face it, these people that did this engineering study, they want to sell us the most expensive thing they possibly can, and we just can't afford it. The DEP has a free website, which I'm not going to say would do all of it, but you can just basically punch in your numbers and such, and they do a lot of the preliminary planning, again, for nothing. Not that there wouldn't be engineering involved and hitching things together or whatever, but that was never explored. Long Pond has always been treated prophylactically with copper sulfate in order to kill the algae before it ever got into the system. That way always worked. Those treatments were curved over the last 15 years, and that's what led to the problems that we have. The DNR also has purview over Long Pond. They arranged with the USGS, because the last time after the 2010 boil water order, they did treat the pond with copper sulfate after the fact. We were told that it was a pond turnover, but that happens around 38 degrees. This was in June and July, so that was a completely incorrect answer. They were to do about $50,000 worth of work to survey the pond, the volume and the gallonage, and they were going to come up with a way for us to treat the pond with a much safer method, which was hydrogen peroxide, basically. While the director of the DNR was on vacation in Montana, Wyoming, wherever he goes, the USGS was escorted or thrown out of the pond. We were never able to take advantage of any of that data. When these gentlemen discuss these systems, you know, it's called a train. You know, you link different things together. Well, I'd like to make an analogy using the train, but we'll call it a drivetrain of a vehicle. Where the rubber hits the road is the pond. To treat the pond beforehand makes a lot of this stuff unnecessary. The pond hasn't been treated properly. Maintenance is lacking throughout the DPW. Anyone can go out and look at a fire hydrant in our town and compare it to one in Bourne or Mashpee.
Focus.
It all focused. It's all our water system. I am focused. The pond isn't being treated correctly. Basically, they're asking us, we'll call this drivetrain vehicle or whatever, the analogy that I use, we'll call it a pickup truck. They're asking for a Corvette engine in a pickup truck because the emergency brake is stuck. It's a much too expensive process. The people can't afford this. Wells weren't even mentioned or explored, they have been asked about. Every other town uses wells. I was told that you could drill 10 wells around Long Pond and get the amount of gallonage that we need at a cost of $1 to $2 million a well. I don't know if that's true, but it seems that it wasn't even explored. At Cape Cod Community College, Mr. Jack gave a symposium on water. I believe you were there, David, and I know several other people that were on the committee went there. He said, and I quote, "Quite likely, Falmouth has some of the best water in the country." Well, what happened to it? He said the E. coli was in the pond, not in the pipes, but that's not what we were told last July when we had E. coli in the system and people got sick. And this is from years of lack of maintenance. They just said that we'd have to institute a proper flushing program. A proper flushing program never should have been stopped in the first place. And as far as the pond, there's no fence around that pond. The pond is not mowed. Every kind of animal, rodent imaginable has a perfect environment there. I mean, these are simple things that could be done before we go spend $57 million. And I'll just go back to what I said. They started out with the wastewater, telling us it was going to be $650 million. But as it turned out, with public input and a lot of hard work, the answer was different. And I think the same process should be applied here. And I will certainly vote against any one of those more expensive options in Town Hall. And I would suggest that taxpayers convince their town meeting members to do the same. Thank you very much.
Mr. Waterbury.
I'm speaking now as a member of the Board of Health. Steve Rafferty and I, both members of the Board of Health, were asked to participate in this whole study process. And we sat through the whole planning process and the review process. We've written a white paper, which we've given you, which outlines our conclusions about what we did. Steve is a professional engineer whose business is to design water systems. I'm a trained microbiologist. And we've gone very carefully through and I think outlined what we think the issues are and what the conclusions are that lead us to that second thing. I think we should be designing for that, and if we can't afford the ozonation at this point, we could design it into the train and add it later. I think we certainly want to do that. There are a number of issues. I think all of you have that 4-page white paper that we wrote and sent to you. I encourage you to read it. It goes through point by point. It outlines the importance of Long Pond. I think one of the issues that hasn't been mentioned, Long Pond is really absolutely indispensable to our water system. Not only does it supply 50% of our total needs, it supplies the critical buffering capacity that we need in the summer. Our water needs go from 4 million gallons a day in the winter to 6.5 to 10 million gallons on peak weekends in the summer. And we can draw that peak out of Long Pond. We can't do that with our projected wells and our current wells. So that capacity to be able to do that is absolutely critical. The other thing to remember is that as we talk now, we have a filtration waiver at the moment. There are only 4 places in the Commonwealth that currently have a waiver to the filtration. That is the MWRA in Boston with Quabbin, Concord, Holyoke, and Falmouth. And I can't tell you how tenuous our situation is trying to hang on to that waiver for filtration. It's pretty obvious that EPA in the near future is going to mandate filtration. And if we were to pick one of those cheaper disinfection chains, we could spend $25 million, and next year they can tell us, you're going to filter Long Pond, and we'd be stuck holding the bag, because nothing in those disinfection trains can be transferred into the filtration trains that we're talking about up here. So I think if you read the white paper which Steve and I wrote and takes you through step by step, I think you'll conclude the way the engineers have, that the most intelligent thing for us to do this spring is to pay for the design of that system and keep in abeyance whether we want to, at the first stage, add the ozonation, but have the ability to design it in and add it later. And I'd be happy to answer questions if you have any.
Thank you. Come right ahead. We've got a long agenda still before us this evening, Mr. Finneran.
Short note. Be that as it may, in the beginning of the wastewater process, when the $650 million proposal was in front of us, I believe that Mr. Rafferty and Mr. Waterbury were both completely in favor of that dollar amount as well.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else in public comment? Yes, Mr. Dwyer.
My name is Paul Dyer. I'm speaking as a town meeting member, Precinct 2. Just for background information, I am a professional engineer. I've worked with water and wastewater consulting firms for about 35 years. I'm particularly interested in this project. I'd like to just give a slightly different perspective. I have not planned to say anything tonight, but I'm motivated by some of the comments made by Mr. Finneran. I don't think we can compare those two processes at all. The two firms who are working with the town are excellent firms, and they're very well qualified to do this work. It's not that they're trying to get more work. And as was mentioned just previously, if we do not go forward with this project, we may have to do something similar in the future, which is going to be far more expensive. We do have a waiver for Long Pond, and that is very tenuous, as was mentioned. I would strongly encourage the board, town manager, and the the Finance Committee to endorse the design of this project so there is no misunderstanding when we go to town meeting, so that the town meeting members know exactly what direction we should go in this process. I encourage you strongly to support this process. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, we'll move on to wastewater. Eric, are you going to present, or?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Eric Turkington, Chairman of the Water Quality Management Committee, and we have a presentation here. Just a brief comment ahead of time. Your board and the town meeting and the voters in the next 2 years are going to tackle the two biggest issues probably in this century for this town. One is how do we treat the drinking water, and the other is how do we clean up the estuaries that surround us. These are enormously complicated, enormously expensive issues, and they're all here this year and next, and it's just the way it is. But I give you a lot of credit for staying this late. There's going to be plenty more late nights on this subject before we're all done. We're going to talk a little bit about Article 24, which is the estuaries issues and wastewater. We'll go quickly through the reason for all of this, which is, of course, Falmouth has more estuaries than any other town in Massachusetts. We have 15 of them. 1/3 of the estuaries on Cape Cod are here in Falmouth. And we all identify ourselves by the water bodies that surround us. Green Pond, Falmouth Harbor, Eel Pond, all 15 of them. For everyone who lives near them, they're a focus of where we recreate, they're a focus of fishing, of shell fishing. They're a key to property values in every part of the town. They're the key to the identity of this town. And they are in big trouble. And you can see from the photographs of Little Pond in 1950 and Little Pond 4 years ago, the change in the development pattern, and that has resulted in nitrogen killing off these estuaries. 75% of that nitrogen is coming from septic systems in people's houses and businesses that surround these water bodies. Naturally, we all want to live as close as we can to the water, and we all want to dispose of our on-site septic, and that's where it goes. Thanks to our sandy soil, it all goes right into the water bodies around these peninsulas. Falmouth is ahead of almost any other place on Cape Cod in what it's doing about it. April 2011 town meeting unanimously voted money to proceed with sewer design and alternative demonstration projects, parallel path. Voters approved it at the ballot by a 2-to-1 margin. It passed in every precinct, which almost never happens. It just shows you how this town is committed to making this work. In August of 2013, your board unanimously adopted a comprehensive wastewater management plan with those exact same elements, and we sent it up to the state after you approved it. Included in that plan, which you and the town meeting and the voters all approved, are a number of projects, all of which you've approved individually for funding, and all of which have gotten a good deal of public attention over the last year and a half. The Echo Toilet Project, the Shellfish Cultivation Project, which this summer, 1.25 million little oysters are going into Little Pond to see how they do at cleaning up nitrogen. Permeable reactive barriers, we've got a consultant on hand who's meeting next week to talk about where and how these might best be located. Denitrifying septic systems, road runoff remediation, all of these are underway. And the final two on this list are the ones we're here to talk about tonight. Boynes Pond inlet widening and the lower Little Pond sewering. The Boynes Pond inlet widening is the biggest bang for the buck of any project we've looked at. But at the very beginning, the very first MEP report recommended opening that channel. It said you could remove a lot of nitrogen at the lowest cost by widening the channel that currently goes into Boynes Pond. A 90-foot opening is the opening we should have there. Right now, we have a 50-foot opening. If you had the 90-foot opening, it's been calculated you could remove as much nitrogen as sewering 350 homes. The cost of that would be less than 40% of the cost of sewering those homes. And the benefit to Boynes Pond would be immediate. When that channel opened up, you wouldn't be waiting a year or 2 years or 3. You would see benefits immediately to that pond. So that's why, and this has come before the board before, but the general public and the finance committee need to know why we're doing this and why it's cost effective. Basically, out of the choices that the engineers proposed to us, this board and the committee gravitated toward basically a bigger bridge and a wider channel. There were culverts and other options, but they were less effective and had other deficiencies. But the one that is most likely to work and the easiest one to do is a channel that provides a 90-foot channel. It also would provide a increase in the jetty at the western side of the channel, which would prevent sand, which currently tends to flow into that pond, from doing so. And it would also create a bigger beach for the people who use Minot Beach. So there's a couple of side benefits that would come from this project, as well as the cleaning up of the pond. The cost of this for permitting and design would be $700,000. We're asking for $300,000 in this package because we have $400,000 in the package the voters approved back in 2011, and we would apply that $400,000 to this purpose. So the only thing we would be asking the selectmen and the finance committee and the voters in the town meeting for would to get this project underway would be $300,000. Now the other one on the list is the sewering of the lower Little Pond watershed. Those fish died this summer in Little Pond. Little Pond is the lower Little Pond watershed that is the most impacted water body in town, and it's the one that we all agreed would be the first one we would try to clean up. A lot of reasons why it's the most impacted water body in town. First reason is, as you saw in the picture, there are an awful lot of houses. They're on very small lots. In the Heights, some of the lots are less than 5,000 square feet. Mary Vista, 5,000, a lot of 5,000 square foot lots. The area is almost at build-out. Almost every lot has something on it. Many homes in the area still have cesspools, which as you know, provide no mitigation of nitrogen flowing into these water bodies. And on these lots, septic system failures are expensive and very difficult to remediate. When you have a very small lot, you don't have much room to put in a Title V system or anything like it. So for all those reasons, that Little Pond area seemed to be the target area. If we're going to do any sewering anywhere, we should start there. So that was the premise that this committee and the Board of Selectmen have been working on for the last 2 years. And some other reasons why it really makes a lot of sense is if you're putting in a collection system, having the houses close together makes that economical. The pipes are shorter. The location is adjacent to the existing sewer lines, and those existing sewer lines can be used. They were built with the capacity to take the septage that would flow from this area. So they have the capacity. The wastewater treatment plant also has the capacity to treat this, so we wouldn't have to build any new plant, and we wouldn't have to put in any new pipes beyond the collection system pipes that in the neighborhood. But for getting it to the plant, the existing pipes can do it. And finally, some of us will remember, some of the older people in the room will remember in the original 1983 plan that the town actually put in the ground back when we did the original sewer system, this area was planned to be in it. They designed those pipes for this quantity of septic. The eastern part of the Heights and the Mara Vista Peninsula was always intended to be the phase 2 of that sewer plant 30 years ago. We never did it, but we may do it now. So here's what it's going to look like as the current design is This is subject to some modification, but it's the best we have right now. And basically, as you can see, it's basically Mara Vista Avenue south to the water, and the portion of the heights, the eastern side of the heights, where whatever goes into the ground ends up in Little Pond. All of that would be collected and go through the existing pipes down Main Street to the Shivericks and then to the Jones Road pump station and up to the plant through the existing pipes. Something they didn't have 30 years ago that they do have now is low-pressure systems. Now, for about half of the area that we're talking about, a standard traditional sewer pipe is appropriate because it depends on gravity, and in at least half of the houses here and the businesses, a pipe could be installed where the septage would go downhill, which is what you wanted to do. Half of them would not, and for those, you would have what you call a low-pressure system, which looks like this. This is what it would look like in people's backyards. What it is a large cylinder underground where, kind of like their septic tank now, except instead of just having the liquids and the solids go there and move out to a leaching field, they would go there, be ground up, and be pushed with a small pump into a modest-sized pipe, not a full-size sewer pipe, but a small-sized pipe. So it's cheaper to install at the homeowners, it's cheaper to install in the streets, and it produces the same goal, which is to remove those products from people's backyards and take them to a treatment center. So that would end up costing, for engineering and design, $4.5 million. It would treat approximately 1,700 residential equivalents between the businesses and the homes in there. And as I say, it can be done without any capital outlay for a new plant or any capital outlay for new big pipes or pump stations. So that's the second piece. The third piece is something that Amy knows a lot about and I know very little about, so she's going to tell you about that.
Hi, Amy Lowell, the town's assistant wastewater manager. A part of this Article 24 request is $800,000 for a couple of items at the existing wastewater treatment facility site. And I wanted to talk about what the drivers were for this part of the funding request. The town reached an agreement, a settlement agreement with the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection at the end of last year over the groundwater discharge permit for the main plant.
Can we just hold?
I'm sorry, I need to switch to the DVD. I take 2 minutes tops.
2 minutes, okay.
Yeah, I was
Okay, do you want to do it now?
I'm going to do it right now.
Okay, so we're going to take a little break for the television audience, and Amy's going to come back as soon as he tells us he switches the tapes.